Previously on the Two Fish at the Table podcast.
Cast episode. Sam actually mentioned during our end of year special a TV series called Lucky that was made about 20 plus years ago. I found the whole series on YouTube. Welcome everybody to the Two Fish at the Table Poker Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Legend of One on Poker Stars.
No, the other host, East Coast Sam on Poker Stars, and today we cross another item off my poker watch list. Lucky, a show that aired on FX in 2003, got one season, sort of a one season wonder, if you will, a ostensibly dark comedy show that didn't make me laugh once. But we'll get into that as time goes on.
Yes, this was a show that Sam brought to my attention a couple episodes ago during our end of 2025 podcast episode, and I had never heard of it, so I was more than eager to give us a watch and see how it lived up to the high bars set by Tilt as far as mainstream poker television shows were concerned. But before we get there, we do want to mention that the 2026 Mind Sport Olympiad has begun.
Mhm.
Just yesterday was actually the first poker event of seven different events, the five-card draw event, and in preparation for this event, we had a little sort of practice session with our old friend Aaron Robertson, who had podcasted to us a while back, just to do a little practice, get the five-card draw juices flowing. We played in a little play money Poker Stars tournament to kind of just get into that five-card draw mindset, and I think it was very helpful, that experience.
Yeah, it was nice to just talk things over with Aaron. Aaron, is new to poker, and so we just sort of went over basic strategy. Neither Ben nor I are super great at five card draw. In the little play money event that we did before the MSO, I went through four bullets and still didn't cash. Really just got nothing going. I don't really recall even making too many hands, not really improving on my draw. Aaron was just sort of feeling for the game. We were going over, all right, what do you do if you have a pair of nines here? What should you be doing after the draw in terms of betting? Why are you betting when you're betting? Things like that. And we will be talking to him before the Stud High Low event, which happens this Thursday, and just, going over things with him, making sure that his mind is right to take these tournaments on.
Yeah, I will say it is quite helpful just almost kind of teaching somebody a game right before you're
Mhm.
going to play a game which you really haven't played much of. It's just to kind of keep your synapses firing and being in the right mindset. Aaron actually showed us up a little bit. He actually outlasted both you and I's first bullet in that little practice game, so that was impressive. I actually made it to the money on my third bullet and got 19th place out of 190 players, so not terrible, not bad. But unfortunately, we knew in advance that I would have to leave very early in the MSO event for work, and so I knew I'd only be able to play the first two and a half levels, two levels or so, unfortunately. But to my surprise here, it seems like whenever I have to leave for work for one of those events, I tend to just do really well in that brief little bit. So I actually got up to 14,500 chips from a starting stake of 10,000 in just those first two levels before leaving for work. So I was actually chip leader of the field when I left at about the 20-minute mark of the tournament. It was a 35 player event, so I figured I'd probably finish somewhere in the middle-ish of the tournament, and as it turns out, I did finish in 22nd place just from blinding out after leaving. So it honestly could have been a lot worse. I mean, it's still it's like the middle third of the field. And so it's kind of cool that I was able to at least have some success and have some. I mean, I had fun in those first, two levels there, 10-minute level events. So that was fun, and I know that you had a bit more success than me actually. On top of that,
Well, kind of, sort of. So the first hour, I just got nothing going. I was at a table with a really aggressive player who raised pretty much 90% of the hands that were played. Every time I'd have a four draw, he would raise me just coincidentally, so I couldn't chase my flush draws or my straight draws. I kept losing at showdown. I kept losing drawing cards. For the first hour, I don't think I improved my hand once when I was drawing. Kept losing at showdown with like a pair of jacks versus a pair of queens, a pair of nines versus a pair of jacks, things like that. So by the first hour, I was down to 5,200, so half the starting stack. The second hour starts off more or less the same. Then I get moved to Aaron's table. So there's about like 30 players left in the tournament. I'm still blinding down, so I'm down to like 2K. Aaron was at like about 6K. So then I get dealt, I think it was jacks up, so a two pair. And I figure, all right, this is my hand. I'm going all in. So I raise. Aaron calls me. I'm all in. And a third player calls me. I pitch the fifth card. I don't improve. I think Aaron and the other guy each pitched, I think, two or three cards. I can't remember how many. Um, check, check. Turn over my two pair. I'm good. So I tripled up. I'm now about 6K. And then a few hands later, Aaron had chipped down a little bit. I was sort of hovering around 6K, picking up a couple small hands. Aaron just sort of kept going down gradually, and then I get dealt another two pair. I think it was jacks and sixes, and I raise. Aaron goes almost all in. He has a little bit of chips behind. It's just the heads up, just the two of us. I pitch my fifth card. I don't fill up. He pitches, I think, three cards. I can't remember exactly how many, but I just sort of reluctantly put them all in, and I say out loud to my computer screen, like, "I'm sorry, Aaron, I got two pair. I'm a short stack too. I got to put you in." He called. My two pair was good, so I knocked him out of the tournament, which made me feel bad. I mean, I'm friends with Aaron, and I want him to do well. So I'm now up to like 8K or so. And again, this is about 20, 30 minutes into the second hour. And then I just go on a heater. I'm getting straights. I got dealt a straight, like a 4-3-8 straight. I start filling up when I have two pair. When I draw, I'm starting to hit my, four draws, starting to get flushes. So in like 30 minutes, I'm now up to 30K and I'm like in the top five stacks. And, I'm like in the top five stacks, like 15 players left. I'm like, oh my God, like, holy crap, how the hell did this happen? Uh, we go on break for 5 minutes. I, sort of take a deep breath. It's like there's still a lot of poker play to go. I'm not guaranteed to make the final table or anything. Uh, third hour starts. The 13th, 14th, and 15th place players all busted pretty quickly, I'd say. So we're down to two tables. I'm now like seventh of 12. I haven't lost any chips. I just, maybe just a couple thousand from the blinds, nothing big. And then for like the next 20 minutes, I just keep getting coolered. I ran two pair into a set, I think twice, lost a bunch of chips, kept missing my draws, started being carded. I go down to 16K, then I win a pot, go back up to 30K, then I'm back down to 16K again. Then I just lose. I run two pair into a set again, and that cripples me. And then my last hand, I go all in with a pair of aces, pitch three cards, don't improve. The other guy has a set, so I bust in 11th place. So it's just crazy that in an hour I went from like 2K being out in like 30th place to being in the top five with possibly a chance of making the final table to losing again. I don't think I played very well, honestly. I think, the situations when I had two pair against a set, I think I could have gone away from it. I kind of knew every time that I was up against a set and I just couldn't fold. There was one time where I paid for information. This was early on. It was against Hugo Pereira, who's a very good player, and I wanted to make sure that he had a set. So I did call when I had two pair, knowing I was behind. But the other times I should have gone away from it. And there were also some times where I missed value, where I had like aces up and I wouldn't bet. So yeah, I don't think I played very well. I'll just be blunt. There are, I think, at least a dozen hands that I misplayed either by just making bad calls or not making my hands and getting value off of them. But 11th out of 35, that's a top third finish. Got my first knockout. I think I only had two knockouts the whole MSO last year. So I'm okay with what I did. Even though it was really just me getting lucky and going on that heater and just getting straights, getting flushes out of nowhere. And I'm a bit more confident about stud high low, a bit more confident. I feel like I'm okay with getting value out of low hands. It's high hands that I have a lot of difficulty with stud. I don't quite know when my two pairs are good and all that. That was a big problem I remember with last year's tournament. I lost a lot of hands with two pairs. So I just have to be careful with that, I think.
Yeah, so I believe you knocked out Aaron in about 27th place. So again, for someone who was learning five card draw a couple hours before an event. I still think that's not a terrible result for him given his experience level. And there was actually one player from RecPoker who a man named Joseph Walton, who I had to text and remind him that the event was that day. I think he finished in 24th, so a little bit before, busted a little bit earlier than me. And again, he mentioned to me that was not his game, so I still think maybe. Again, all things considered, not the worst outcome for someone who's not particularly confident in that game. So all together, we had Aaron in 27th, Joseph Walton from Rec Poker in 24th, me in 22nd, and then you in 11th. And last year, the first event was a hold'em event, if I recall. I think it was 42 players. So this one, not being a sort of standard game, being a five card draw, only 35 players, I'm very curious. Will this indicate maybe a smaller poker field of players compared to last year? I am curious there, but at the same time, it is only the first event after all, and given the space between registration opening and everything starting, we're not quite sure if that's a trend or just a one-off trend.
I thought it was an overperformance, honestly. I figured that it would be fewer than 30 people given how late registration was. So 35 was pretty impressive, I thought.
Mhm. But again, I kind of feel like I personally almost like recruited two players for the MSO this year, being Joseph Walton and Aaron. So if you take them out, that would have been 33, so a little bit closer to the 30 number that you were mentioning. But again, with 7 events, your top 5 finishes indicate your point total. I'd like to hope that this would not be one of my 2 point totals, but obviously it's not the only event I'll be missing due to work. So could be worse. And I felt very happy with my quality of play. I felt I was on with my reads. I was locked in. Maybe it's a little easier to be locked in when you're only playing for 20 minutes and you can put all your poker energy and your brain into that small time frame. But I'd like to think that if I had played longer, I would have done pretty well. But I'm happy to hear that even though you said you didn't play well, you still had a pretty good final placement, all things considered.
Yeah, and I had fun. Again, it's just crazy. It's rare that you go card dead and you go on a heater, then you get cooler all in the same tournament. So it was kind of fun, the swings. I mean, I was, a little annoyed at the game I played, but I've had a night to sleep on and it's like, all right, next time around, just get away from the two pair. That's the message I'm sending to myself.
Well, Thursday, so in a couple days, will be the 7 card stud high-low event. I think as of right now, the MSO has it mistakenly listed as just stud high. So hopefully they fix that, or maybe they don't fix it and have both, and then one just gets counted for medals and one doesn't count. One counts for points, but that's happened before after all. So we'll have to see. But let's move on to the main course of our episode here, the short-lived TV series Lucky, starring John Corbett of Sex and the City and My Big Fat Greek Wedding fame. He's been in other things too, but those are just sort of the two things I associate with him, especially since those came out, within a couple of years of this TV show dropping in '03. So clearly it was meant to be maybe trying to capture some of those fans, some of that audience that knew him from those roles.
Yeah, and it also stars Craig Robinson, who probably everybody knows from The Office, as well as Hot Tub Time Machine and other comedy films. Also, he was on Mr. Robot, a bunch of other stuff. And then Billy Gardell, who I think Ben and I both know from My Name is Earl, as actually a couple of different characters in that. And then actually a number of sort of guest stars and sort of character actors who you see in a lot of different stuff. Dan Hedaya, Michael Rooker, Bill Murray's brother, all sorts of different people. Dan Costella, who voices Homer Simpson from The Simpsons, was in this too. A pretty wide range of people. And then it was created by Rob Cullen and Mark Cullen, the Cullen brothers, I guess you'd call them, who I've never really heard of. They've done a bunch of different TV shows. They also wrote the film Cop Out that Kevin Smith directed. And they were nominated for an Emmy for this in 2003 for Outstanding Writing for a Comedy Series, which apparently was just for the pilot and not for other things. Uh,
Yeah, let me just see. I'm gonna check real quick and see what the other nominees that year were.
mhm.
Looks like we had everybody loves Raymond, the Bernie Mac show, Raymond twice actually, and then Sex and the City. So not necessarily the highest quality competition if you ask me, as far as other shows, but nonetheless, the point's taken. So with this show Lucky, it aired on FX network, and that's a network that I kind of always associate in a weird way of quality. I mean, it's one of those
Mhm.
cable network shows that nowadays you see, like American Horror Story. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia was at one point on that channel. Now it's on FXX, but still under the same company umbrella. So again, it's definitely a show known for maybe more mature, darker themes and shows. And so, but then of course, me not being an adult back in '03 when this was dropped, I wasn't really familiar with what the landscape was of this category of channel or this category of show at that time. So I was curious to see, what to expect here. Would we see, anytime you hear the words dark comedy, that usually means not, I think of, like, fart jokes, fat jokes, slapstick. You wouldn't expect that on a dark comedy show usually. I mean, maybe slapstick a little bit if you frame it right. But really, I was expecting maybe, with gambling in Las Vegas, maybe a lot of sex jokes, maybe a lot of, dark, humor maybe in dark moments. So kind of like Breaking Bad, where there's comedy mixed in, but it's within the this dark, adult world where it's meant to sort of contrast with the drama to give you a little bit of levity in certain moments. And so I really didn't know what to expect. And when I saw that Billy Gardell and Craig Robinson, two actors that I kind of consider sort of side character veterans when it comes to sitcoms. Billy Cardell was also one of the leads in Mike and Molly on CBS. So he's definitely to me maybe they weren't as prominent in '03 as they are, years afterwards. But definitely these were guys that I thought have comedy chops, and I was expecting some good stuff from them.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at FX, it's an interesting point that you bring up this channel. I mean, looking at the shows that were around at the time, there was the show Nip Tuck, which I've never seen, which I think is sort of like a dark medical drama about like a plastic surgery firm or something. Sons of Anarchy was a few years after this. The Shield, which is like a crime drama, was around at this time. And then obviously later on, they did The Americans and American Crime Story and Louie and sort of all these darker shows. And yeah, I mean, dark comedy really pushing the envelope here. Like, and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. They're making jokes about, you know, child abuse and murdering each other and drug and alcohol addiction and all of that, right? I mean, dark comedy, you really have to push the envelope and get nuanced and get twisted. And as you mentioned, yeah, I mean, Craig Robinson and Billy Gardell, I think, are both talented comedic actors. I think he did a great job. Craig Robinson in The Office. I think Billy Gardell did a great job in My Name is Earl. And they were both sort of in their characters a bit snarkier. They weren't doing slapstick. They weren't doing over the top stuff. So when I saw this cast, and I've seen John Corbett and other stuff too, I think he's a pretty good actor. Not like a huge A-list star, but like a good character actor. So I was pretty excited looking forward to this. I thought that this might have some chance, might have some stuff to make me laugh. But I mean, I'll just be blunt. Craig Robinson and Billy Gardell are terrible in this. Their characters are absolutely I hated these two characters. Hated these two characters. I mean, more so than honestly anything in Tilt. Like the Officer Sad Sack is like so bad it's good. Like I'm laughing at him. I hated these two characters in particular. There are a lot of other things that I don't like about it, as well as things that I thought had potential if they had just been moved around a little bit and made to work. And we'll get into that as we go episode by episode here. But in broad strokes, I mean, it drove me nuts.
Yeah, so we can do is we can go through each episode, break down, them and then go over the whole show as a whole. But yeah, so one of the main problems of this show is that typically there's really an A plot and a B plot. The A plot always involves Lucky and one other character. Usually, it could be Terry, it could be the Trach, it could be Joe. There's usually some sort of plot, and then there's a B plot with Craig Robinson and Billy Gardell. Their characters are named Buddy and Vinny, or I guess Buddy's called Mutha. I just call them, Daryl and Cop from My Name Is Earl, honestly, in my head.
Yeah.
And sometimes the B plot will intersect with the A plot, and that usually meant that B plot was marginally more tolerable for me because at least it meant something. But so often that B plot with the two friends exists in this little bubble and just is like maybe three scenes sometimes of just total nonsense that is often repetitive from a previous episode, doesn't result in any plot development for any other character, and is just forgotten by the time the next episode rolls around. And the action, and it's called a dark comedy. And you mentioned that you didn't laugh once. Now, with sitcoms, there's different levels of laugh, and there's like a smirk laugh, like you kind of like there's a haha, there's like a belly laugh, and then there's just like, having no laugh at all. I would say if there's like no laugh at all, like a small smirk, a smart like verbal laugh, and then like a belly laugh, I would say maybe I had like the second one maybe twice, and that was about it. Like, and that was mostly when maybe like somehow the plots intersected or something like that, because maybe the one most consistent plot device in this entire show is some sort of like con or scam being unveiled, or like they're conning the conman who's conning them back. And so maybe like the first once or twice that happened, I maybe sort of like had some slight like smirk at that like outcome. But then by the time that happens a fifth, a sixth, seventh time, I was not laughing or even smirking.
Yeah, I mean, to clarify by laughing, I mean like ha ha ha, like that sort of laugh.
Yeah.
Again, there were a few things that made me smirk, and by a few I mean like five. But in terms of like, oh my God, this is so funny, I have to watch this again, nothing like that. And you know, yeah, I mean, it's just, I just, ugh. Like I've never seen a comedy where I just haven't laughed once, where things are registering for me in my head as jokes, and I'm just like they're just not connecting with me at all. And then there's other things that I think are trying to be funny or clever, but I don't understand what the logic is behind them. Like, why is this trying to be funny? Why is this building the way it is? I mean, you mentioned how the My Name is Earl guy, Billy Gardell and Craig Robinson sort of stuff is off in this corner over here. But Lucky's doesn't really evolve either as a character. He kind of just goes through the same thing over and over again, the same beats. You may have noticed, audience, that we haven't really brought up anything poker related because there's pretty much nothing poker oriented in this show. I mean, you have a couple of scenes where he's at a table and he's like, I got a pair of queens. And then a player across the table from him goes, well, I have a pair of kings, so I win. And Lucky goes, gosh darn it, and he gets it from the table. But like beside that, I mean, we don't see an entire hand play out once. We don't get any sort of discussion of strategy, being tight, being loose. There is an episode that's centered around Lucky having a towel, which again we'll get into as we go episode by episode. But I mean, this is a show that is poker adjacent. It is not a poker television show. It's a show that has like a taste of poker. It has a little seasoning on top of poker, but it's really just about this guy having relationship problems over and over again, getting ripped off over and over again, and these two bozos do stupid slapstick, and that's the whole show.
That's a good way of putting it. And also, one of the problems with anytime a comedy show has only 13 episodes or is not on like a major network, ABC, NBC, is that a lot of times the episodes feel very like concept episodes. Like you could, in my notes, I would often put like next to the episode's name, like it's a blank episode. This is the doctor episode. This is the scam episode. This is the out of order episode. And the problem with those episodes is that usually you mix those in to break up the monotony of episodes that are more formula. But even within those episodes, the formula is still, a heavy element of it with the, A and B plot. And I feel like maybe every now and then there'd be maybe one episode of a C plot, but even then, it often is mostly attached to the A plot of Lucky in some way. So we didn't really get much. And also, if you check the Wikipedia page, it lists the main cast as just the three guys. Even though you could argue that Terry, the love interest, is maybe the fourth lead of the show, she's not given main cast status. And I mean, she does appear in the majority of the episodes. I would say maybe 8 or 9 of them she's in them. But she's really more just a plot device for our main character to have this sort of like artificial sense of should I stop gambling or not? Is it bad for me? And really, the show never really commits to the idea of addressing the gambling addiction. It starts off, mildly going in that direction and then really loses sight of that idea as it goes on.
Yeah, and another thing is each episode is 22 minutes. Okay, well, that's conventional sitcom length. What's the problem with that? Well, when you have this A plot with Lucky and then this B plot with the two bozos, and they don't intersect with each other, then 22 minutes isn't really enough time for either of these plots to get development. And even if they do intersect with each other a little bit toward the end, nothing just really feels developed or fleshed out. And Lucky's stuff has like a little bit of continuity through it, but not really. I mean, there's no real sense that it's building in a particular direction. The passage of time and what is happening in between episodes and in between scenes is also confusing to me. Not as bad as Tilt, but just the lack of continuity and a through line among these episodes. Why are things happening the way they are, and what is happening off camera? These things needed to be fleshed out, and 22 minutes, or some episodes being just a little bit longer, doesn't give you enough time in order to really develop a through line and make everything feel fleshed out and coherent.
Yeah, I think why don't we get into our episode by episode breakdown here, because episode 1 is the pilot. It's the longest episode of the show. It's 27 minutes. Pretty common on TV with the pilots maybe a few minutes longer. They might give them an extra 5, 10 minutes slots when they premiere. This premiered in April of 2003 and then ran, I think, basically weekly up until June of that year. So again, this is a time where I would have been way too young to have really been watching anything on this channel or to have heard of it. It begins with the start of a final table introduction for the Pro Poker Championship, where $1 million for first place. I understand that, I could give him grief for it being only $1 million, but I guess I'll let it slide. It's an even number, whatever.
Mhm.
We see a bunch of players, including our main character, Michael Linkletter, nicknamed Lucky. Honestly, I've heard worse nicknames for poker players, so I let that slide too, I suppose. And Luck in Las Vegas, whatever. And then there's a quick montage of poker action that, again, is just so fast that you can't really grasp any of the situations or the flow of the game. So it's just more of a, almost like a PowerPoint montage of poker happening, whatever. And probably the biggest poker faux pas of the entire show, though there's two I want to get to, but the first one is just that people are playing with chips still in the rack at the table in a tournament. In a cash game, it's not uncommon. I'll give them that, but in a tournament, that just does not happen.
Yeah, that really bothered me. I mean, again, the poker play is so minimal. It's just as simple as like, I've got this hand, and then it cuts over to the player who Lucky's playing against. Goes, but I have this hand. Again, we don't see action on multiple streets usually. It seems like the cards are just kind of selected randomly. There's no thought behind, oh, this person seems to be playing with Jack 6 off, but this person's playing with 9-3 off. There's no close-ups on the cards as they're being dealt, so you can't really. I mean, if you stopped and you looked closely, you can see what cards are being dealt on the table and what the community cards are. But you have to look closely. It's not the object of this. I mean, it seems like they just sort of picked poker as a device because that's what you do in Vegas, and it's edgy and it's a dark comedy, and that's what you have to do. But poker could have been used a lot better as a storytelling device. Lucky you used poker better as a storytelling device than Lucky did.
Yeah, and after that sequence, we see Michael or Lucky, let's call him Lucky now, makes a big call. The guy's like, I got the two pair, I got the flush. Blah, blah, blah. He's trying to, he's reading, and really, that's the only poker skill we really ever see from what makes Lucky a good player is his reading ability, which is again kind of cliche, but at least they kind of stick to it. A couple times they call back to it, even though it takes more than just reading ability to win. You need to bluff, just as much as you need to make a hero call in poker to win. And then we get a very kind of low quality, low rent, goofy intro sequence where it's only about 20-ish seconds long, but it reminded me kind of in a bad way of the Celebrity Poker Showdown intro where it's just kind of a, cheap little intro. And obviously I would like to think that had the show had a season two, they would have updated or upgraded the intro, but it wasn't very impressive to me.
Yeah, I hated this opening credits sequence. After I saw it for the first time, I just skipped through it in subsequent episodes. Yeah, it just looks really cheap. I mean, this whole episode looks really, really cheap. It's shot mainly with handy cams that are kind of shaking around a little bit. And as I'm watching it, I watched this whole thing at 1x speed, by the way, because I wanted to get a sense of the pacing and how things were
Yeah.
building. And as I'm watching this for the first time, I'm going, is the handy cam supposed to be an intentional decision to show, Lucky's agitated, he's nervous, he's off center of the frame and he's off center in
Yeah.
real life? I thought that might be the case, and I realized maybe they're just doing it to save money. I mean, I think it's just the latter more than the former. And also, like the lighting and color correction in the casino, I don't think look very good. It reminded me a lot of Tilts. We see very little of the casino. I mean, there's slot machines, there's poker tables, but again, it just looks kind of cheap. It looks like a set. It doesn't seem like there's like a big space where people can gather. There doesn't seem to be a theater or a restaurant or anything where people can sort of go, which is often there in casinos. Um, by the way, Ben, did you notice who directed this episode? Just curious.
I did not check on Wikipedia for the different episode directors, no.
So this was directed by Anthony and Joseph Russo, who some people may know as the Russo brothers, who directed Avengers Endgame. They have directed Avengers Endgame. They also directed and produced Arrested Development, Community, and Happy Endings. So this is like the first thing they ever did. This is their Citizen Kane is Lucky episode one. And you would have no idea that these guys directed, the highest grossing film of all time. You'd think that these were just two bozos. I just couldn't believe it when I saw that.
Well, and you know what won the Emmy Award the year after in the same category? Arrested Development's pilot. So I
That's
wonder
pretty
if there's some
crazy.
sort of favoritism there, yeah. And so after the intro sequence, we get to the 1 year later where Lucky's life is a mess. He's lost his wife, he's lost his money, he's trying to come up with some money for his in-laws to pay for the funeral of his wife. And I thought that, if we had leaned more into the wife backstory stuff, maybe cut in some flashback sequences throughout the season, going back to him now versus his old life, that could have done something. Because, a lot of times with shows that are on these obscure channels that aren't like NBC, ABC, Fox, CBS, is that they try to, they're a bit, there's more subtext, there's more to it than just the emotions on the screen. And this show's ambitions really were not set that high at all because this episode kind of exists in a bubble here to get and it leaves Lucky's past mostly in the past, except for dedicated subplots in later episodes.
Yeah, I mean, it's very weird that you have Lucky winning, his wife is there, and the guy asks him, like, what are you going to do with the $1 million? And he goes, lose it. And then a year later, we cut, and we find out later in this episode that his wife has died. He didn't just get divorced, she's actually dead. But it doesn't explain how she died or when she died exactly. We never quite find out how he loses the million. If I had to guess, it's like compulsive gambling, but did he play cash games and try to move up in stakes? Did he like make a bad investment? Did somebody steal money from him? Like, we're not really sure. Like, all of a sudden, he goes from winning what's basically the main event in this universe to selling cars and living in a hotel room. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense at all to me.
Yeah, and at this point, he's working as a car salesman, and he's trying to sell cars to earn a bonus. And I thought there was a mildly decent gag with a tape recorder of his boss, where he's trying to hold him to his words. And so, I thought that wasn't the worst attempt at a joke and a moment of humor. So again, this is still early in episode one, so I'm not against the show at this point. So I thought, okay, that's not bad. He's like, you told me you promised me a bonus. No, I didn't. Okay, but I didn't say this. Oh, yeah, you did. So that wasn't bad. It kind of reminded me a bit of the pawn shop scene from Lucky You, where he's trying to, talk his way out of selling a camera to the lady. And so I didn't think it was terrible. He gets a couple $1,000. But then unfortunately, right after this scene, we get what is the first of many cringe and groan-worthy scenes with the two, friends here with a horrible rock, paper, scissors gag attempt where it's like, oh, paper beats rock. I mean, paper beats scissors. Like, this wouldn't be. This was not funny in Casper Meets Wendy, a kids film I saw 5 years prior to this coming out, and it's not funny here. And basically, the level of comedy on display is at this level or lower for the rest of their scenes for the rest of the show.
Yeah, and it's just so weird tonally, right? You have Lucky having this situation in the car dealership. He loses his job, right? Then you have this rocks, paper, scissors scene with the two bozos. Then the next scene afterward is Lucky going to a compulsive gamblers meeting. And he's, hi, my name's Lucky and I'm a compulsive gambler. And he gives this big speech about being a compulsive gambler. He's going to come back and sponsor somebody and, give back to this community. Like, you have this sincere scene right after just this ridiculous, weird, crass humor. I mean, tonally, it just doesn't make sense. It's not jarring enough or dissonant enough to catch you off guard and get a laugh out of you. It really just feels like these two scripts are just sort of thrown together out of nowhere. Like, this was an entirely separate thing. They just threw it into the middle of this script of episode one and just rolled with it instead of being like, we need to wean this out. It's just very odd.
And then after this Gamblers Anonymous meeting, this is where we meet Terry for the first time, who will be the main female character of the show. And then we move on to just again Lucky trying to come up with this money and the methods by which he is able to or try to get it. There's one guy called the Trach who has a tracheotomy. That I thought was kind of amusing. I thought that if we have lots of bizarre characters with weird nicknames like that, this could be a fun little Las Vegas universe that we were entering into. I think he appears 3 times in the whole show, so I guess he qualifies as a recurring character just barely. But again, he's just more of a prop to dangle money in front of Lucky than more than anything else, which is unfortunately what a lot of these characters are at this point. He unfortunately can't get the money from the Drake, so he has to get it elsewhere. And so Vinny gets this great idea. So I'm going to go and run in the middle of the street and get hit by cars and get paid money. And within like 2 minutes, he gets $2,500 somehow, which is total BS, by the way. I mean, we saw Kenny Hotz in Triumph of the Will try to do the same thing and get zero money. And again, if you hit someone's car, like I don't know, I feel like if I'm the driver, I'm wanting money from that guy that's making an ass of himself. I don't think it's a easy one-to-one road of like, oh, I get money automatically from you if you hit me.
Yeah, I mean, the one silver lining about that scene is it shows like how good of a friend he is to Lucky, that he's willing to get hit by a car for him. Like that was the one sort of thing I appreciated. But yeah, it's just like odd. And for whatever reason, they're like playing the theme from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood over it. So like as he's getting hit by cars, like it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Like again, is that supposed to be dissonance? Am I supposed to be like, oh, that's funny that they're playing this song about love over this guy getting hit by a car? Like I don't get what the joke is. What's funny?
Yeah, it's just kind of pure slapstick and farce, and it's just when you're talking about scenes with, you know, paying off your wife's funeral and again was anonymous and stuff like that. It just doesn't vibe well, and it's just again I would expect jokes like that in like a kids sitcom, but not in a dark comedy on FX with John Corbett and Craig Robinson. I mean, I expect better, and unfortunately, another problem about the two friends is that we don't really get a huge sense of why Lucky considers them such big friends. There's no scene of when they met or what they did for him before he won the money or after he won the money, and they're just kind of like a lot of ways, it's kind of like those like sitcom loser archetype characters. And because of that, you kind of wonder why does Lucky associate with them? Now they stick with him and they have his back, but it just kind of seems like they're only because the plot says they have to, rather than they don't really have any falling outs ever. They don't really develop as friends or as characters. We don't learn more about them. And while we learn about Lucky a little bit over the course of the season, these two friends we just learn nothing about at all.
Yeah, and they're just like thieves and con artists. Like they're constantly stealing money and trying to rip people off. And okay, they seem to be good friends to Lucky, but in some nebulous sense, I mean, they're sort of around when he's around. And as time goes, there is a little bit of conflict involving them later on with Terry, really, which we'll get into later on. But like, there's no real sense that they're like they have a shared history, that they have similar likes and dislikes. They're not gambling when Lucky's gambling. They're just meeting at this diner, which they keep going to over and over again. There seems to be just one diner in Las Vegas that all the characters go to just over and over again. Yeah, I mean, it's these are just unlikable characters because they're just these thieves that don't have any redeeming value. They're not smart. Their banter isn't funny. I mean, there's this one joke where the Drake, as I wrote in my notes, just falls out of his chair, and then Craig Robinson leaves. He's like, "He's black, and I'm gone. I gotta run away before the cops show up." What is that supposed to be? Like, he's just an asshole. Go help this guy who's falling out of his wheelchair. It doesn't make any sense at all. No likable qualities at all, ever. Just crazy.
And now the pilot also introduces this character that ends up mugging Lucky, and he kind of will appear a few times throughout the show as well. I think his name was it Danny or something? He's like a druggie that is always getting. He's supposed to be one of the recurring characters here, and again, he's also just another kind of low life. So, and again, in Vegas, I'm not expecting to have like Mother Teresa in the main cast, but if you're not laughing at a loser character, then you're really just having no reason to have him on the screen at all. So this realtor lady named Terry, who's at the Gamblers Anonymous, asked Lucky to be her sponsor, which is interesting because I guess that's a pretty, it's fine. I feel like had they given this like an angle of like Gamblers Anonymous, being a part of that program and being that could have been something that you don't really see on TV too often. So we can oftentimes these dark shows they latch onto one community or one idea, and that's sort of how this show stands out from other parts of the television world, so that you have a reason to watch it. The Gamblers Anonymous stuff really just kind of comes as in and out, just on a whim, because players will say that I'm done gambling. Next episode, they're gambling. Next episode, okay, I'm going to stop gambling. And by episode's end, they're gambling again. And while that's a part of addiction, it's not really framed in a sort of tragic way where it's like we feel bad that they're back to gambling.
Yeah, I mean, Terry mentions that she's a compulsive gambler a couple times. She tries to go clean for a little while, but it's not quite clear how her problem came about. It seems like she played blackjack more than poker because we later see her play blackjack. So again, that backstory just isn't really defined. We see that she's a realtor. She doesn't seem to be the greatest at her job because she calls Lucky to come over to a house when she's trying to sell the house, which is a really weird thing for a realtor to do. And then we don't really see her work again. So, like, who exactly is she? What does she see in Lucky, and what does Lucky see in her? Um, I mean, at first their relationship seems to be basically platonic, that, he'll be her sponsor, but then they do fall in love with each other later on, and it's just like, what do you see in each other? In the first episode, you need to establish some sort of connection. By the end of this episode, I don't see any.
Yeah, like obviously I was constantly comparing this show with Lucky You and Tilt,
Mhm.
just because I guess if you kind of smash those two into a sandwich, you would kind of get lucky in a weird way, I suppose. But again, they do begin out as friends, and there's another character that kind of doesn't quite reach the status of a love triangle interest, but she pops in and out enough, and there is one scene where there's like a brief moment where it seems like maybe there's some sort of love triangle going on that doesn't really come. The episode, at least the pilot, ends with Lucky seeing $100 chip on the bathroom floor and sitting down at a poker table to try to beat this loudmouth player. And that's sort of like he's weaseled himself back into gambling because he found this money on the bathroom floor. The problem is that again, it would have been nice in a pilot of a TV show to have a sense of what his end goal is. Like, if he gambles this $100 and plays poker, is he trying to get the $1 million back? Is he trying to re-win the championship again? Is he trying to just, pay off his house? Or is he, give us something that's like an end goal, or at least an attempt at an end goal, so that it's not just him gambling for gambling's sake.
Yeah, I mean, there's one little through line through this episode that he's trying to get money to give to his dead wife's parents for his dead wife's funeral. So that's why he needs this money. And he does get some money from this sort of shady con artist guy named Joe, who's played by Dan Hedaya. And Joe's sort of like ominous. He's like, lucky if you don't give me my money, bad things are gonna happen. I know where you live, that sort of thing. So, I mean, there is that as a little bit of a through line. So I guess he's gambling toward the end to pay Joe back. But after that, what does he want to do? You're exactly right. Does he want to go clean? Does he want to get another job? He never talks about really another job after losing his job at the car dealership. Did he want to be working at a car dealership for the rest of his life? Does he want to own his own business at some point? Just give a little bit of exposition. You can just have Terry and him in front of the fountains at the Bellagio. They're on a romantic date out. And she goes, well, I used to be a compulsive gambler and I started gambling after this, that, and happened. And Lucky goes, well, I used to be a compulsive gambler and now I want to go on the straight and narrow. It takes you 30 seconds. Take out one of these scenes with Craig Robinson and the My Name is Earl guy and, do that, and that would be okay.
Yeah, and again, it's not that it's a huge deal to not have that just direction, but in a pilot, you need to sort of give the audience a sense of where the show is going or what the purpose of the show is. Even in a sitcom, I mean, with the episode with The Office, the pilot episode establishes the documentary format, gives us a brief bone of the Jim and Pam love story, and gives us peeks of every other member of The Office. And here, again, we meet these characters for the first time, and a lot of these are recurring characters, but we don't really learn much of them beyond just them, interacting with Lucky in some capacity. So again, the basic ideas of the show. Again, after watching this episode, I was still curious to see where the show would go because I thought that there was still promise of a poker champion trying to stop gambling and being a part of Gamblers Anonymous and maybe being with somebody who's also trying to quit gambling and how that might work and surviving Las Vegas with loan sharks and muggers and around. But I still didn't think that this was an unsuccessful 27 minutes of television. But I still had maybe mild hopes that maybe things might change because with pilots often exist in their own headspace with a show. Sometimes the direction of a show can change from a pilot to episode two a lot, or they learn from the feedback of the pilot from the network and they adjust things as the show goes on. So it wasn't like I lost all hope. But and with episode two called Calling Dr. Khan, we begin with a poker scene actually, mostly just an inner monologue with Lucky reading the table, and then losing in a crazy cooler hand, of course, top full house against quad tens. The problem again though is that the action flies by so fast you can't really analyze anything or really latch on to the emotions of the moment with the poker. And of course, the main point of the scene is just to establish that Lucky has lost a bunch of money.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay to kind of start off the episode with Lucky being down, and then the episode's sort of dramatic tension is how he's going to get the money back. But yeah, I mean, again, what is really the point of poker being here, right? You could have replaced poker with blackjack, and it's the same thing, or you could have replaced this with craps, and it would have been the same thing. I don't understand why, poker and specifically No Limit Texas Hold'em is being used as a device here, other than, oh, this is what was popular at the time. and we're just going to put this into the show. There isn't any deeper meaning here that could be gleaned from it.
And so I will say at least this episode had a bit more of a plot to it, where both the A
Mhm.
plot and B plot had a part one, a part two, and a part three, and they did intersect. But this is again sort of the first of many episodes, derived entirely around the idea of deception and scamming and con tricks here. So the main plot is Lucky is interacting with this supposed female doctor who has lost her luggage while traveling with her son, and Lucky feels bad and gives some money that he has won to her, and he's trying to get his money back from the scammer. And the scammer's name is Amy, although she's constantly lying about what her name is, so it could be a pseudonym. And concurrently, the B plot is the two friends, for some reason, decide they want to pose as doctors at a medical convention. And it's this is kind of almost like a kind of a classic sitcom plot where person A goes to place B, poses as person C, and has to sort of improvise a speech or a presentation or something to not be found out. But the problem is that there's really no reason for them to be there. There's no stakes where if they get caught, they get arrested, like, or something. And it's just kind of like a plot I would expect out of a much simpler either kids show or like some laugh track sitcom on CBS. Just nothing that I was particularly thought was a unique story relative to the show Lucky.
Drake and Josh did this subplot better. When Josh gets hospitalized and Drake pretends to be a doctor, because there's a reason why Drake pretends to be a doctor. Josh is in the hospital. Drake wants to go and see him. He can't go in during visiting hours, so he pretends to be a doctor to go and see him. Also, because Drake, I think, injured Josh in that
Well, also
episode.
Drake's trying to get nurses' phone numbers too.
Yeah, exactly. Drake and Josh is better than this show that got nominated for an Emmy. I mean, it's just crazy. So unfunny. I mean, Craig Robinson gives this, speech and, he gives like hip doctors are hip doctors. Let's get our party on. And everybody starts cheering. Like it just comes out of nowhere. It's so bizarre. Yeah, and the Lucky stuff, like again, it's at least a little interesting. You're kind of curious to see where everything goes. The con is a bit interesting. The use of the child sort of in on it as part of the con. I thought that was a little cool. But again, nothing that I felt really took me by surprise. I was kind of expecting when I saw this scene for the first time, oh, that woman's a con
Yeah,
artist and he's
same.
losing his money. Something else is going to happen later on in the episode that, would turn this formula on its head. I mean, I was nothing nothing really grabbed my attention. Nothing got me invested into it. It just made Lucky look like a dork. It just made him look like a loser that, here's this intelligent gambler who's been in Vegas his whole life, who's won basically the main event, and he's getting duped by this woman. It just makes him seem like an idiot, not like a smart person or a caring person.
Now, so the subplot intertwines with this plot because the two doctors that the friends befriend at this event, who are actually pretending to be doctors as well, which I thought was it was kind of a cliche punchline, but I thought it was done okay with them in the elevator. There's a shot of them saying that the doctors were great, and then they end up losing money in golf to them, which I thought was also could have been a good opportunity for some good physical humor here, where they miss some shots or they freak out. That's like kind of a classic, sports physical comedy thing that they totally missed out on. But again, the show is very cheap, so they probably didn't want to film on a golf course or something in the hot sun or something, if I had to guess. And then they have to do this ridiculous fake heart attack ploy to expose the doctors being fake doctors, and then they do this ludicrous golf cart jousting to settle the tie, and it's just very broad, lame humor. The only saving grace is they use those fake doctors as help in the final scam where the plots intersect, where they play this doctor game where Lucky loses money to these other doctors that are the fake doctors to get the money away from Amy because they were going to split the profits in that. I guess I guess I give them small points for at least making the A and B plot intersect because so often the show does not do that. But and all it amounts to is she tries to get the money back. She steals it with a little pickpocketing. He pickpockets it back, basically. So again, there's constant, one-upsmanship, which I guess to a certain point is amusing, but not funny or anything.
Yeah, I mean, I just never laughed. It just registered with me as this is trying to be funny, but this isn't funny. It's happening too quickly. The A and B plots, yeah, do come together. But what exactly is the timeline for things happening? When Lucky is told about this plan to go and scam this doctor's game, did he talk to Craig Robinson and the My Name is Earl guy and they told him, oh yeah, I've got these two fake doctors that we can use for this plan? Like, how exactly was this all arranged and brought together? When exactly is this happening? A little bit more details would be okay here. And these two fake doctor characters we never see again. They just disappear. I was hoping that, like, okay, they sort of talk after the scam is done, like, oh, we should do more scams together. We seem to have a good rapport together, but then they just disappear. So, how many scam artists are running around Las Vegas? Just an endless deluge of scams and one-upsmanship going on. But at least like Lucky manages to give the money back to the guy that he took money from. So at least, that's sort of his resolve toward the end of the episode. But again, we're really just sort of picking at straws here. It's just very inconsequential, just not funny.
And as far as our episodic poker faux pas thing, to point out, the other thing I wanted to mention was just the weird way that these players would table their cards at Showdown, where it's like they hold them in their hand like this and they're like fanned like that. So when normally you just turn your cards over in front of you on the table when you're exposing them rather than being in front of your face like that. Just not how it's done in real life. So again, it definitely seems like the writers didn't know the poker etiquette or poker culture of which they're trying to recapture on screen.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think they just picked poker because that's what first popped into their minds and that's what was apparent to them, right? It'd be interesting if they integrated a little bit of poker strategy into this. It doesn't have to be GTO or anything, but just a little bit more detail to show why this was selected. And speaking of wondering why things were done and selected, episode 3.
Yeah, so this is probably the most bizarre plot, and I guess it kind of jumped out as me as kind of one of my favorites, almost by default due to how bad the rest of the show is, but just because of how bizarre the plot got here. Because this episode, I call it the meat ship episode, basically, where basically Mike and Terry have hooked up once. I guess not they're not a couple right now, but they're just sort of in that. Well, I said the step that on Tilt they skipped with the Matador's daughter and Eddie Sobrine's character skipped basically, and while he's basically urinating outside afterwards, he gets mugged and offered a job by this meat butcher shop company owner. Because he's like bleeding and he's got no money now, and so let me help you with this job here. You look like a nice guy, and I'm going to give you these giant pieces of meat to walk around Las Vegas with, even though it's going to go bad in the sun probably in 2 seconds. And you're going to help me make a lot of money, and you're going to make money for me.
Yeah, like he wakes up on the floor of this office with a steak, like holding a steak to his head, like, it's a pack of ice. And he just gets given this job. And then he gets this like guide on meat with this guy, like with pointing out like the different parts of a cow with this giant stuffed cow sitting in this office. And now he's just walking around Las Vegas with a bologna under his arm. And he just walks into random restaurants like, hey, here's this bologna on the table. You want this bologna? It's good bologna. You better buy it. Like, you wouldn't call them on the phone in advance. Do you know how meat supplying and restaurant supplying works? You don't just walk into a restaurant and go, "Hey, you're going to buy my stuff now." You have to talk to the owner. You have to talk to the chef. You have to figure out what they want. You have to get deliveries arranged. It's very odd. I mean, yeah, it's supposed to be, I guess, funny that this guy in like a suit and tie is walking around with a bologna under his arm, but it just doesn't make any sense. It just comes out of nowhere. And it's also weird just how enthusiastic Lucky is. Like, we see him lying on the floor at the stake. He gets offered this job, and then we cut to this diner where he's with the two bozos. And the two bozos are like, "What? You're going to be selling meat now?" And Lucky's like, "Yeah, I'm going to be selling meat. I'm so excited. I'm going to be selling meat." He just keeps repeating over and over again, "I'm going to sell meat." Like, why? Did you look up what this company was? Did you get an offer about how much you'd be paid? Do you want this sort of job? Do you not want to gamble anymore? You were gambling in the last episode. Where did this come from all of a sudden?
Now the one upside to this episode is that there's not quite a dedicated B plot with the friends. They do get involved in the meat wars in a sense by like faking like poisoning or food poisoning from restaurants and throwing up, so that the competition loses their the restaurants as clients, and so Lucky can swoop in and make the sale there. So, but again, they're just being they're lying. They're being idiotic. They're like, oh, I'm so sick. Oh, help me. It's just like a really broad comedy that doesn't teach us anything about the characters or mean anything in the long term. And I guess I'll say I didn't see the twist of this episode coming where Lucky was set up by the meat guy by he's done this before where he's had people get mugged and then offered them jobs to acquire new employees. But why wouldn't you want to acquire employees via conventional methods? I mean, that's what the interview process is for, right? I mean, if I could pick someone who applies for my job, has a resume, is normal versus some compulsive gambler that I want to knock on the head so they're gonna get brain damage for all I know, I'm gonna take option A anytime.
Yeah, it's just very weird, this overly elaborate way of recruiting people. And the ending just feels very contrived with how this is delivered. Like Lucky is all of a sudden the vice president. He's at this like event. They're all like, "Yay, you're the vice president now." And then he bumps into this other guy. He's like, "Oh yeah, I was mugged and Murray saved me too." And Lucky's like, and he goes and confronts the president, and they get into an argument with each other. And it turns out that the baloney has dollar bills inside of them. So they're just bribing people, which just doesn't make any sense. And in the middle of all this, slapstick with meat, he and Terry get into an argument with each other in their house, and Lucky's house, I should say, in which she reveals that she's a vegetarian and she gets mad at him that she never asked that. It's like in the middle of all this weird meat slapstick or whatever you want to call this, you have this like pretty realistic conversation. Like it makes sense that Terry would be angry that Lucky didn't know that she was a vegetarian and hasn't asked him any hasn't had, he hasn't asked her any questions about her personal life or her likes or interests. Like that makes total sense to me. But it's just so weird and jarring to have this in the middle of this episode with all this weird humor and stuff. Like, you need to take this scene and really give it the development it deserves instead of throwing pot roast through people's windows, which is what this episode seems to be more interested in doing.
Yeah, I didn't laugh watching this, but I could at least imagine that maybe some people might have laughed at the absurdity of the meat stuff and the taking the meat wars so seriously. So again, that's one of the reasons why I definitely put this towards the higher rankings of the 13 episodes, even if it's not, particularly impressive still. But unfortunately, probably for me, the weakest by far of the first four episodes is episode four called "Come Lie with Me," which I refer to as the lying/cockfight episode, where once again we get just tons of lame slapstick overacting by Billy, with him inheriting this chicken and not wanting it to fight. Not it just again probably one of the top three worst subplots maybe of the whole show would be this cockfight storyline.
I mean, let's just go over the storyline. So it starts off with a GA meeting. Terry's talking about how she hasn't gambled in 36 hours. There's a guy there who's a cockfighter, and he's got his chicken in a cage. And my name is Earl guy sees it and goes, "Oh, hey, I want that chicken now." And then there's a curse with the chicken. So Craig Robinson keeps getting hurt. They're in a car, and the camera starts shaking because like the car is shaking or something. And Craig Robinson gets hurt somehow from the car shaking. And then the My Name is Earl guy starts dressing up like Mickey from the Rocky movies, and he starts talking to his chicken like, "All right, chicken, you're gonna eat lightning and you're gonna crap thunder. You're gonna win the fight. You're gonna win the title." And then it cuts to this cockfighting ring, and it's like this dark room, and you see all these people in the background cheering. And My Name is Earl guy's got the chicken under his arm. Craig Robinson's in like a cast for some reason. And Craig Robinson's like, "I put all my money on this chicken. This chicken is cursed. You got to go and win the fight." And then it cuts like there's a scene with Lucky, and then it cuts back to the cockfighting ring. And then My Name is Earl guy is running out of the ring like, "I don't want to hurt my chicken. I don't want my chicken getting hurt." What the fuck do you think cockfighting is about, dude? What the fuck do you think was going to happen? Your chicken's going to get hurt. And Craig Robinson's like, "I put all my money on this chicken." And then like My Name is Earl guy is out in the desert. And he's like, "I love you so much." And he lets the chicken go. And it's like, is that supposed to be sad? Am I supposed to feel heartfelt about this? Like, what the hell is going on? And then it cuts back to the diner. And My Name is Earl guy's like, "I'll pay you back." And they eat a chicken. And that's the end of that subplot. What the fuck? Like, what the fuck is this supposed to be? What's the humor? Where does this come from? What is it building toward? Nothing happens. This is never mentioned again. Okay, maybe if like My Name is Earl guy in the next episode comes up with some plot to pray Greg Robinson back, then maybe that could work. But It's never mentioned again. This chicken is never mentioned again. What the hell? Like, what were these characters thinking? Where does this curse come from? How does it fit into anything? What the fuck was this supposed to be? It really feels like they had this from another script and they're carrying it into the production office. And here's the script for Lucky Season episode 4. And then they dropped it on the ground and the two scripts mixed together. They're just like, all right, we'll just do this. We can't tell which script is which. So this is episode 4. That's really what it feels like to me.
Yeah, it's pretty atrocious. I mean, at least the A plot with Lucky and Terry, it's something that at least applies to the whole season, which is their relationship. So it's, again, them lying about I'm not gambling, but I'm gambling. I see you're gambling. I'm sorry, I'm gambling. I'll stop gambling. It's just it's not anything funny or interesting, but it's at least not nearly as cringeworthy as the subplots. Yeah, we learned about Terry that she's lost almost $100,000 gambling, that she's married, her husband is unhappy and kicks her out and writes Liz on her forehead. Again, abusive, kind of, but I mean, writing, I'd rather someone write loser on my forehead than punch me. So I guess as far as domestic abuse, that's on the minor side here. The husband, we don't actually ever get to meet, which I think could have been good to learn more about Terry as a character, because for the most part, I mean, the portrayal of her is pretty bland to negative in that she's always trying to control Lucky. Now, sometimes she's justified, but I'd like to know, why she thinks certain things rather than just her saying them out loud and Lucky having to react to them. With the rest of there is one poker moment that kind of reminded me of House, with House folding the two aces to Cuddy in the opening poker scene where Lucky has four kings, but then when Amy sees him playing poker, he folds the hand right after her. But we've seen episodes where he'll play a hand, leave his chips on the table, and then come back to them. So he could have just tabled his cards, won the hand, and then gone back to his stack later. Like that didn't ring true to me at all.
Yeah, and he pushed his chips in to make the call and then folds the quads. So pushing the chips in means you've called. That's binding. So I don't even understand him folding the quads there.
Yeah, it's just kind of silly. So again, just a really cringe-worthy episode, and unfortunately would set would kind of officially lock in the trend of this B plot being this broad, awful subplot that has no correlation with the main plot of the episode.
Yeah, just really terrible. Oh my God.
With episode 5 called The Tell, this is probably the second most poker-focused episode of the entire season. It's kind of it splits itself between poker main plots and blackjack subplots, where we see the return of I guess our favorite scammer, Amy, returning to cause trouble for Lucky here. Where once again Lucky is at the opening scene, he's playing poker, he's winning, and again the through line of when he wins, when he loses, really is just kind of almost random. Wherever the plot says, if the plot says he needs to be broke this episode, he loses. If the plot says it doesn't matter, then maybe he wins. He gets offered to be staked in a tournament, which again reminded me a bit of Lucky You, where he was offered a stake deal as well. Our main character, Huck, I mean, in a 60-40 deal. And the subplot here is our two fat friends here trying to get backed for blackjack, being money coming from a guy who I call Virgil because he played Virgil on Burn Notice for a couple episodes. So I'm gonna call him Virgil, sorry, where they actually fool Virgil into thinking that My Name is Old Cop is like a Rain Man memorization card savant because he has memorized the menu to the restaurant they're sitting in because he's fat, so he knows food very well.
Yeah, this whole subplot just came out of nowhere that they all of a sudden now need a backer and they're like, but we don't have we don't do anything with our lives. And they go, that's the beauty of it. So again, these guys are just unlikable con artists. They get this money from Virgil, but then like Virgil threatens them. It's like, I know who your cousin is. I know where your mom lives. And so they play blackjack and they actually manage to run it up. They get to 24K, so they've got enough money to give back to Virgil. But then My Name is Earl Guy, for just some reason, decides to keep playing. And when he did that, I audibly groaned because you know that he's then going to just lose the money and they're going to be up Schitt's Creek.
And
So that's exactly what happens. And they manage to get the money back at the end because Lucky manages to counter tell, sort of turn his tell against his opponent and win a big tournament and gets the money. But it's just so predictable. It's so contrived. It's so strange. It's not funny. It's not clever. The characters just all look like idiots. I mean, the My Name is Earl guy and Craig Robinson don't, earn the money. They don't do anything right. They just put the money on Lucky and Lucky does what's right. So again, it just makes them seem like total buffoons. And you just have to wonder if, why is Lucky hanging out with them? What do they have in common? Just nothing described at all. But at the end of the episode, when they give the money back to Virgil, My Name is Earl guy's like, hey, I'll play for 40. And then right at the end of the episode, this is so funny. He's losing again. And he goes, Mom, go hide. So funny. Oh my God.
It's just so bad. And also when they had learned that Virgil like had researched their backgrounds, because their original premise was we're going to pretend to be just some two schmoes and he won't be able to know who we are. They could have just not taken the money at that point. Like I know it might have come across as kind of cowardly or unmanly, but just don't take the money then. I mean you're not he didn't like borrow the 10K so you could loan it to you for this game. He had the money the whole time, so there was no reason to just be like, you know what, never mind, you keep it. He wasn't charging them interest. He was just telling them they had to double it. And again, they went from 10K to 24K. So they could have just returned the 20K and kept the 4K, but they decide, no, we're going to go for more. But again, even we don't really, they didn't really establish that these guys are compulsive gamblers. I mean, we can kind of infer they are, but they're not really part of the GA meetings or anything. We don't really know what their background is with gambling. Did they have a big score like Lucky once did? We don't know it all. So it just, again, it rings hollow. And with the main plot here, we haven't really talked about that yet. So he gets with the return of Amy the scammer lady, he realizes that he has this tell or something because he's losing supposedly, and this backer backs out and puts the money in on this sort of arrogant other poker player. And so the big scam that Lucky pulls off here that works out is that he it was all a big scam to begin with, where the tell was with his adjusting his ring, which he had gotten out of a pawn shop a while back that after he had pawned it a earlier episode. And so the master plan with Amy involved here is that he's going to get to heads up against this guy, and he's going to have a situation where if he does a fake tell, he'll be able to win the hand. And again, it just relies on so much luck to even get to that point in the first place that it just kind of sinks the idea that this was a successful con to begin with.
Yeah, and it's just again another sort of Hollywood tell, this big conspicuous gesture like the Oreos and rounders. It's just so over the top and apparent. They could have done something a lot subtler. Instead, they went with this. It's just really ridiculous.
Yeah, and I guess the only sort of like master plot development is that at one point Terry sees Lucky and Amy in the same car together and is like questioning what's going on here. And of course, with Amy giving Lucky a kiss goodnight on the cheek, it only adds supposed fuel to the fire. So, but after this sort of fight, they are ultimately still together. And so, oh, woe is me, everything is well in the poker world for Lucky and Terry.
Yeah, I mean, everything is well at the end of this episode, but then at the end of, well, into episode six, we finally get like a bit of a flashback and a little bit of details in terms of Lucky's relationship with his wife. He has this box with his wife's stuff in it. There's this slow motion shots of him like looking at this stuff, and it cuts to his wife's face and it's like close up on her face. It's again just so tonally strange after you've had the last episode with My Name is Earl guy, calling his mom because he's blown $40,000 and all of these weird subplots. Like you all of a sudden have this episode that's mostly serious. There's very few jokes. Lucky doesn't do anything funny. I don't think Terry shows up here ever. So, I mean, it's just such a weird tonal shift between all of these episodes, and just the lack of continuity through everything is just so odd. To wait until episode six to give exposition on Lucky's wife dying, not in episode one or episode two, episode six, halfway through your season, just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, this is but even in spite of that complaint, it is probably in a vacuum, probably my de facto favorite episode of the whole show, actually.
Mhm.
I feel like had you had all the non-Terry episodes in the first half of the season, and then had this episode, and then you could focus the rest on Terry for the back half, that would continuity-wise, timeline-wise, flow-wise, kind of make sense. But literally the last scene of episode five is them being together, being happy, and then now we're going to have an episode without her in there and only about focusing on his dead wife. That is, again, probably the most tonal shift, jarring moment of the whole season when it comes to the themes and plot developments. As far as this is really the only episode that really kind of even hint at some sort of emotional depth. Again, we're talking like base level stuff. I mean, even those laugh track sitcoms that we hate so much have those occasional like touching moments where like friends hug over a tragedy or something like that. This is about as working at that level, and and actually I want to say I think I did laugh. I wrote that I laughed twice in this episode, so I guess maybe that's like the high point for like when I laughed in the whole show. I didn't write down what I laughed. Oh, that's right. I did laugh at when Lucky buys his two friends cars and they're all excited and giddy. I thought that that was at least some overacting that at least made sense in that context because it was just kind of childish. Oh my God, this car! I don't know, but I thought it was. I guess I laughed a little bit, not like a belly laugh, but a small laugh there. But with the flashback scenes of his wife, again, this is the first time we've seen any footage of her since the pilot. And again, had they sort of maybe put in one scene per episode up until this point, this really could have felt like it had built to something substantial.
Yeah, I mean it's just very odd to have this be in episode 6. I mean, you have this flashback where his wife's talking about luck and how there's a symmetry to luck and you should be doing, something for a stranger, something for your friends, something for someone you love. And it turns out this is the first anniversary of his wife's death. So Lucky decides to put this into action. So he buys cars for his friends, something for his friends. He gives some money to a stranger. He tells him, here's a bunch of chips, go and join a country club and never come back again. And then he like rents out this suite or something and he takes off his ring and throws it into the water and that's supposed to be something for his wife, which I don't really understand how that's for his wife. It's just odd that this comes out of nowhere and there's this sort of I guess unspoken tension that maybe Lucky's going to commit suicide or harm himself at the end of the episode. Craig Robinson keeps asking him what's the matter, what's wrong. When they realize that it's the anniversary of his wife's death, they shut this party down and they go to him. So it's like, there's supposed to be this sort of tension here, but there's no reason why Lucky can't say, hey guys, it's the first anniversary of my wife's death. I'd like to do something kind for you. Thank you for being here this last year. I'm going to be okay. I need some time for myself, but here's a present for you guys. Thanks for everything. There's no reason why he can't say that. It's not like you have to do these things for people without any explanation. I mean, that part just doesn't make sense to me, and that's really what made the episode fall apart. It's like you can just tell your friends that, but then yeah, these two bozos, like okay, them sort of screaming and because they've got new cars, that's okay. But then they have this like party in a suite with like clowns and strippers and all sorts of things, and it's just so weird. It's just not funny. Like at one point, he's Craig Robinson's pushing the My Name Is Earl guy in a shopping cart and they're talking about what DVDs stand for. What does that abbreviation mean? And then you have this like super serious scene where they like all hug each other. They're in the hotel room. They've made up with each other. And then it cuts to the two friends in a swimming pool swimming around. Like, what the heck? Like, the humor just doesn't work here. If you want a serious episode, have a serious episode and just focus on the drama. Don't have the subplot with this humor in it.
Yeah, with dark comedies, it's one of those genres where you can get away with having some drama mixed in. Like I think that this it's a malleable enough genre of TV where it wouldn't be considered out of place. I mean, had there been a bit more to the idea of him getting his bracelet back, buying his old wedding ring back, maybe we cut to a scene where he won it, a scene where he proposed, his wedding, where he got the ring on his arm, on his hand, that could have added some thematic completeness to the story. As is, I did think it was kind of funny that he borrows 10K from the trach, then he goes up to the guy, I want to buy my bracelet back. So then he keeps playing roulette until the guy agrees to pay it off to him. That was kind of funny because even though it's ludicrous that he was just guaranteed to win roulette back to back times, it was a good way of applying pressure to the pit boss for buying it back his bracelet, and also it explains where all this money came from that he would be spending on the rest of the episode at least.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense a little bit, but it's just again, it's just not that funny. I mean, it just doesn't make me laugh. And I don't think it's super clever. Again, it's just kind of contrived how he just plays roulette all of a sudden. He also plays craps later on and just keeps winning hand after hand after hand, which I thought was also very contrived. There just needed to be more structure and continuity building up to this. If it's going to be episode 6, okay, fine. Mention the wife a few more times. Mention this one for your friends, one for a stranger, one for yourself thing. Just add a little bit more continuity so that you build up to this point.
And I did feel that I did. What was I going to say? So there's one scene where Lucky gives this loudmouth guy 20K to go back home, and I thought that at least him trying to own him verbally at least felt like there was some spice to the dialogue there. So I guess I'll give him credit. It kind of reminded me of when we watched that Burt Reynolds film where the guy was like, send the ATM home. There was like one line of like table talk that I thought was kind of amusing. That was kind of a similar moment for me with that. But again, when I say like that, it might seem like I'm defending this episode a little bit. And I kind of am, but only because this is kind of just for me my favorite of the 13. But I'm not saying it's a good episode. I'm saying it's the best of the rest. The rest of the episodes are just so bad. This is just the best one by default almost.
Yeah, I mean, watching through all these episodes, and I agree with you about the scene where he's talking to the guy and tells him to go to the country club. Like, I kind of like how he breaks him down. I like how he looks at his shirt. I think that's kind of cool. And, again, like, given what we've just seen, this weird subplot with the chicken and all that, it made me just kind of realize like this needed to be a drama instead of a comedy. They just needed to go for the story of this guy who is a poker champion, lost his $1 million, lost his wife, and he's rebuilding his life. And he wants to get away from gambling. He wants to get away from poker, but he can't get out. He has to keep gambling because he has nothing else in his life. Like if this had just been a pure drama, maybe 10 episodes, 45 minutes an episode. You don't have the two bozos. If you want to add a little bit of comedy, you can make Lucky a bit snarky. You can have Terry be a bit snarky, and that's how you can get your comedy. And if that had happened, I think this episode would have worked a lot better for me. But it's again just all the dissonance, all this, stupid comedy, and just this 22 minutes again just isn't enough time. The scene where he's breaking down this guy just isn't enough time to really let it settle in, let it just be seen how much of a jackass this guy is, and how at the end of this scene, after being broken down, he's turned the corner. Now he's a nice guy. He's going to go to this country club. They needed to just make this scene be a bit longer and have more continuity. Then this could have worked. But as it stands, it just doesn't work.
That's totally fair point here. But
Yeah.
speaking of doesn't work, we have episode 7 entitled Savant, which I wrote in my note as the Rooker Autism Scammers episode, where we have Michael Rooker, who I'm familiar with. He was Merle in The Walking Dead, and I
Mhm.
think he's one of those guys that's in a little bit of everything, kind of like Ron Perlman is kind of a similar guy that's in a lot of roles like this as guest stars in TV shows and side characters and other stuff here. And with this episode here, this is again one of those episodes where the A and B plot kind of combined.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, my takeaway from this episode is that when you're going to tackle an issue like autism, please just let the person be autistic, please, because it just really ruins any sense of we're trying to shed light on something that you wouldn't see on basic, network TV when you're watching cable TV. And it also just with mental illness, you really got to be careful with the tone and the nature in which you use it.
Yeah, I mean, just to indicate what we mean by autism. So Lucky is playing this poker hand. This autistic kid comes and sits down, and you know that he's autistic because he's doing all these strange tics. He's talking in a strange voice. He's using all these movie quotes. Just kind of close your eyes and think for a second about stereotypical portrayals of autism on television. This is what is going on here. A woman comes over and retrieves him. And it turns out that she's his sister, and she's gonna lose custody of him to social services if she doesn't get a job. I wrote 5 question marks next to this in my notes. It's like that's not what happens. So Lucky offers to watch him. Lucky offers to give him food and sort of help him out. And Lucky doesn't really understand him. And then it turns out that the autistic kid isn't actually autistic. He's a con artist, and he robs Lucky and runs off. And I wrote in my notes, what a surprise. Literally the same twist as episode 2. Wow. I mean, really, I just thought this was really gross, honestly. Number one, this really stereotypical gross portrayal of autism. But also, number two, pretty much the same plot device as episode 2, even down to having like a female con artist with a younger male con artist. Just ridiculous.
And then the ending being that they trick the person, including the person that they're working with, to ultimately win in the end. The other part of the episode is where the two friends just run over to an old lady who's playing slots and steal her bag of coins while she's playing slots, and she doesn't notice obviously. And Detective McCall, but played by Michael Rooker, catches them stealing it and sort of threatens them as if he's like been following them for a while. And I know that you guys were thieves, and we know they were thieves. And so I guess my sympathies was kind of on the cop side because I mean, these are scumbags, and of course, we learn that McCall is essentially like a dirty cop, and that he's sort of backing scammers to, I guess, earn money on the side. But I mean, it's like, so they go out of their way to try to make it seem like the two friends have the moral high grounds because they're being threatened by someone who's also a scammer. But then the problem is where this two plots overlap is Lucky's chasing after the money, and it's almost like a bad episode of Burn Notice where it's like we're gonna fake trick you into thinking that this person's turned on you, and then they call the cops on him to investigate Rooker's character, where it's like the flow of like who thinks of what and who's being arrested kind of got lost for me at the very end of how it all flowed, and again, it just didn't amount to anything really either.
Yeah, and also Michael Rooker has this like weird Jesus thing going on. Like he just keeps his character keeps talking about Jesus and the Lord and all that. It's very strange. Like they're trying to add some flavor to this character, but it just doesn't work. It just feels very strange. And yeah, as you mentioned, again, like what is the timeline here? So Lucky gets robbed. Lucky confronts these people. Lucky confronts Michael Rooker. The two friends confront Michael Rooker. Like, how did they connect with each other to come up with this plan to get the money back and also screw over Michael Rooker and then contact the police? Like, when is this occurring in relation to each other? Did they have a phone call with each other? Did they meet at the diner? How did they work out all these details? Because the friends managed to get a garbage truck, which is like a municipal piece of property. Like, you don't just get a garbage truck anywhere. So you need to have resources and timing and planning to get stuff like that. It just doesn't make sense at all. Like just a little bit of exposition, a little bit of some, something to get put this all together just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and again, it's once again where there's a scam happening, and then a scam happens on the scammers, and there's a scam within that scam on that scam, and it's just that just one scam level too many. Whereas with these episodes that are contingent on there being a scam, like oftentimes we learn it's a scam like halfway into the episode, so there's not. Like it's one thing if it's like a big twist ending of the whole episode where it was all one big scam, but once you see that there's one layer to the onion of a scam, you kind of just expect there to be more after that, and especially once we've had now multiple episodes contingent upon someone lying to what person A lies to person B, and so now we just assume it's all gonna be amount to, lying on top of lying.
Yeah, and also so many variables have to go into this plan in order to make this work. Like the, fake autistic kid and his, partner have to react in a certain way to the two friends posing as cops. Michael Rooker has to react in a certain way. Like if they just like make a phone call to the police department and check to see if the two friends are cops, like the whole plan falls apart. Like everybody has to act like idiots in order for this plan to work.
Yeah, and again, because none of the friend characters are likable, I don't really care, and it's a problem of like even with Dwight Schrute on The Office, he's a unlikable jerk a lot of times, but there's also those moments where you root for him and you laugh at him and you want him to win, or you root if he's likable in certain ways, and you have to give hints of that to these characters for these subplots to really mean much, and of course they don't, so they don't.
Yeah, and Dwight is also a competent salesman. He's established as somebody who's, smart in his own way. He's the best-selling person at the company. We never see these two friends really do anything right. And maybe their plan goes right at the end of the episode, but then at the next episode, they have no money and it's into another scam again. Like, just give me some sense of competence with these characters.
Yeah, and also, there was another sitcom called Two Broke Girls, which tracked how much money these two girls had towards their end goal of running a business or something like that. And now we're halfway into the show, and nothing's really changed besides Terry and Lucky being a couple. Nothing's changed. We don't know if Lucky's up money from when he began gambling again. Is he any close to achieving his poker dreams? Just nothing is the status quo is the exact same, and obviously that's a problem when you're a limited season run. You want to feel like something has been accomplished halfway through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Episode 8, again with these sort of cable network shows, a lot of times a lot of the guest stars are often actors that you wouldn't expect maybe in, say, a traditional 22 to 26 episode sitcom. So and usually it's because they usually are one-off episode appearances by these actors, and maybe they become a recurring thing once a season if the show lasts more than one season. But here we actually have two pretty high profile, if you ask me, guest stars in this episode entitled The Method, with Thomas Hayden Church and Giancarlo Esposito of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul fame, among other things, obviously, including Poker Night, the horror film we reviewed last year. But this episode, it takes a plot device that I've seen in two other shows. One was Monk, and the
Mhm.
other one was Curb Your Enthusiasm. And the problem is that anytime you have a plot device that you are familiar with, you're going to obviously compare it to how effective that plot device is used. And this is definitely by far the weakest usage of the method actor copies this actor and gets too deep into the role kind of plot that I've seen of the three.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Monk. I mean, again, that's an hour-long episode. You sort of see the method actor following Monk, and then he slowly takes on his mannerisms. Thomas Hayden Church just takes on Lucky's mannerisms too soon. He starts just assuming things about Lucky way too soon. I mean, it is a little bit funny sort of seeing Thomas Hayden Church sort of mimic John Corbett's performances and sort of mannerisms. Like he walks in sort of dressed and his hair styled the same way. Like it didn't make me laugh out loud, but it's like a little smirk there. Um, Giancarlo Esposito, I mean, terrific actor on Better Call Saul, terrific actor in general, a great career. And I'm not going to blame him for what he is in this episode, but oh my God, like he is such a homophobic caricature. I absolutely hated this character. He's this like flamboyant, sassy
Barber. Yeah.
hairstylist barber who like wants to stake Lucky, but is also like imprisons Craig Robinson in the My Name is Earl guy at some point, and like imprisons Thomas Hayden Church at another point, and like threatens to assault people and threatens to sexually assault people. Like just really, really gross. I really, really hated this character.
Yeah, and again, for the most part, I kind of associate his character more with the two friends because there's like, oh, my hair is all messed up now from this. What am I gonna? Everyone's gonna laugh at me. It's like, who cares? Just shave it off. I don't know.
Yeah.
A lot of guys their age would be lucky to have hair at all. So come on. Um, the main plot though is where Thomas Hayden Church plays a actor called Bobby Blaine, which again, I always think is strange when you have an actor not just being portrayed by himself. I think why not just use your name in the episode, I guess. And he wants to study Lucky for $20,000, but it involves unfiltered full access to his life, which just reminded me of Burn Notice again when Anson had to follow Michael around for an episode during one of his missions. And again, it'd be one thing if Lucky learned something about himself through watching himself in the eyes of somebody else, uh, but the whole episode is just him kind of like not listening to Terry, who keeps trying to tell him news, which I thought was her maybe saying she was pregnant, maybe like that was my guess of
Yeah.
what news was going to be. Turns out the big news is my divorce is final. Well, it's like, oh, great. It's not like the husband was a character. It's one thing if like the husband character of the love interest of the main character is like a force in the show, but when he's just this shadowy, never seen, only mentioned only this time and when he wrote the word loser on her forehead before. And if you're obviously watching the show weekly, you might have forgotten it even existed. It really didn't seem like this like big dramatic news that you were teasing with the whole episode.
Yeah, it was very odd that that was the payoff. I thought, yeah, she was going to say I'm pregnant or, let's move in together or something like that. It was just very anticlimactic at the end. I mean, Lucky, I guess, learns a little bit about himself over the episode that he sort of apologizes for being closed off to Terry. There's a scene between Thomas Hayden Church and Terry where they talk to each other and they like break down Lucky's life and like oh like he keeps he won't open up to me. Well, he won't open up to me either. Uh, just very weird, too contrived. Um, yeah, I mean, of all the people that Thomas Hayden Church is supposed to again be Bobby Blaine, this big movie star who the two friends recognize, like why would you pick Lucky? Why wouldn't you pick somebody else who's more accessible, right? One thing is like they never mentioned Phil Hellmuth or Daniel Negreanu or any like actual poker players, unlike other properties that we've looked at. So I mean, is Lucky like the most famous poker player in the world? Like, are there other people who are around? Like, why don't you follow them instead of this bozo who just keeps going to this diner over and over again?
Yeah, I guess the one detail of Bobby Blaine's performance that I thought was kind of funny is when he kind of like half mocks and half references Lucky's habit of talking to the mirror, which is really the only framing device that is used maybe like once every other episode, honestly. It's not even used
Mhm.
every episode. I thought that was a strange choice where, most sitcoms might have like one detail that's in every episode. And so like him talking to himself in the mirror could have been that character moment where we get a bit of insight into his thought process, into who he is. Even though it's only used every other episode, at least it's kind of funny to have the like almost like not quite a fourth wall joke, but it's a bit of like a third and a half wall joke where referencing that. So I kind of smirked that little bit there, but otherwise it just amounted to another episode that was just very shallow overall.
Yeah, I mean, the mirror monologues, as I called them in my notes, sort of it feels like it's a deliberate stylistic choice to add something distinct to the show, like kind of like JD's narration in Scrubs, this sort of fantastical inner narration. But in Scrubs, they waited until later on in the show to do fourth wall breaks, have other characters have narration, have people make fun of JD for being in his head all the time. To have this device not really be developed and then to drop in this fourth wall break in episode 8 just doesn't really work to me. I mean, yeah, it made me smirk a little bit just because Thomas Hayden Church, I think, does a good job sort of mimicking John Corbett's mannerisms. But you need to have a scene like this later on, like in season 2 or 3, and you need to use this device in every episode for this to really land.
Yeah, and again with the end of the episode, so there's a very confusing scene with Giancarlo Esposito's character where like they play like one card war or something to settle the debts, and I
Yeah.
didn't quite catch that from the dialogue. Maybe I just wasn't like paying too close attention, but I was very confused as why he would agree to that game and why it would just be worth for that much money, why he would agree to that.
Yeah, I was really confused by that scene too. Like Lucky just shows up in his barber shop and they do this thing. And then Lucky wins and just walks away, and we never see Giancarlo Esposito again. So it's just really strange.
Yeah. Episode 9, again, it definitely fits into one of those had promise and potential episodes for me. I see you're nodding, so you probably agree. It's called Lie, Cheat, and Steal, and it's if I told you the synopsis of this plot, you might think, yeah, if this was a poker show, this is a plot that I could see being something I would expect, and that is that he is accused of cheating and sort of loses his ability to play. His reputation's tarnished, and he has to try to find out who burned him, kind of burn notice, and get his street cred back. And so that did pose to me a question of, would being banned from poker for a gambler in recovery, would that be a good thing? I mean, it's like being an alcoholic and being banned from every liquor store in the country. It's kind of a good thing, right? So, but it doesn't. The plot never pauses long enough to really address questions like that. Instead, it's just more focused on the once again the return of famous, our most favorite con artist, Amy, returning, and she figuring out what her role is in setting him up for being a cheat, supposedly.
Yeah, I mean, there is potential here. As I mentioned, if this had been a drama instead of a comedy and you didn't have the two friends, I think that this could have worked again with a little bit more context, a little bit more development with Lucky and Amy's relationship and who Amy, herself, like what does she want when she bumps into Lucky again? Does she want to talk to Lucky? Is she trying to distract him for some reason? I mean, that's not really clear. And just I guess marginally interesting to see where exactly this goes. Was Amy responsible for it or not? Who exactly was responsible for it? It turns out it's just these two random characters we've never seen before. I mean, if this had been one of the friends or this had been a character introduced previously, this could have worked. But again, just these two random characters, it was really anticlimactic. It was really lame. And then you have these two bozos playing with condiment bottles, trying to figure out who it could have been in the diner. And they're like leaned over tables, like, who's the ketchup? Who's the salt? Who's the A1 steak sauce? There's like 5 scenes of this. It just keeps going. It's so bad.
And it's probably the worst subplot of them all because of just how there's literally nothing to it. Like the other subplots might have been more cringeworthy as a whole, but just the fact that it's literally just them arguing over, I thought I was the ketchup, but then who's the mustard? It's just so abhorrent. Like someone got paid to write this, and then someone thought, let's film this on camera and put it in the episode. And while yes, some might complain or might argue on playing devil's advocate that yes, because of the mustard bottle, Lucky pieced together the whole thing. But I mean, it's just they didn't have to write it that way. They could have had some more clever sort of eureka moment for Lucky than that to have been the how he gets the whole puzzle together in his head, and it leads to, I guess, what is like kind of like a fight scene of sorts, where when he
Yeah.
encounters the two guys, and they have Amy locked in the trunk, and that gets no attention at all. That's a pretty traumatic thing. I mean, you'd think maybe we might, we could have seen her being thrown in the truck and to add some more stakes, because the idea of a poker champion losing the ability to play is like a pretty, social stakes wise, pretty high. because that's the whole premise of the show. You can't play poker, and then he's in big trouble. And so you could have added to that sense of dread and sense of tension by showing, Amy maybe having a scene to herself because she's really never shown by herself or any scene at any point in time. And that again, that really could have had something to it because Amy is again, once again, she's like the second lead female character in the whole show, and so it doesn't seem unfair to have a scene with her about Lucky in it.
Yeah, I mean, she just gets so little development. She's this con artist. She's running all these scams. She's being paid off by this person to do this thing, and she's over here doing this thing. Like, does she want to be a con artist? Where did she came from? Where is she going? No sense of who she was. And at the end, like Lucky offers to take her to the drive-in and they like walk off together. Is that supposed to imply that they have some connection, like romantic chemistry or something? But then we never see them together. Lucky's playing in a poker tournament at the end. Um, it's just I just don't understand this character and what she's supposed to be. I mean, you could combine her with Terry, honestly, and it would work just as well, if not better, because you don't have these two competing characters. You can just focus all your attention on this one character.
Or again, you could have had all the Amy episodes in the first half of the season build up. Maybe will they be a couple, and then Terry, and he ends up with Terry. He realizes he loves Terry instead, and then and all the Terry subplots after that. Again, it just felt like that this episode could have been anywhere in the season, or that they thought they could do that, and it wouldn't harm the flow of the show. And that was of course an incorrect chance. Especially all of them are jarring when episode 10 is another episode where the main plot leads to him realizing he wants to be with Terry. And again, it's just weird how with a sitcom like this they could just have no sense of continuity and progression of what makes sense in what order. Because a lot of times, sitcom episodes are made and not aired in the production order. Some people are only available certain times of the year. You have to go on the filming schedules. But when you're editing this all, you have to make sure it all flows right.
Yeah, I think episode 10 is probably the worst episode of the show and one of the worst episodes of television I've ever seen. Um, I mean, the opening starts off with this like weird memento sort of in media res moment where like Lucky's like, I don't want to die today, Dad. And he's like walking along the side of the road bleeding. And then some truck driver comes along, gives him a ride. And then it just like bobs and weaves through all this weird stuff out of order that, Lucky's like a kid and then he's an adult and then he's with his friends and he's not with his friends and then he's with Terry and then he's not with Terry and then he's back in the truck talking to this truck driver, all this weird shit. Like it really feels like the director and writer saw Memento before this, like we got to do that on our show about a compulsive gambler and his two loser friends. Like it just doesn't make any sense to have this come out of nowhere. Did he even talk about his dad before this episode? I don't think he did.
No, this is the first time.
Yeah, it's just so weird. In episode 10 of your first season to do something like this, this had been talked about in episode 1, okay, but this just comes completely out of nowhere and stylistically is so different from the other episodes. I mean, it absolutely boggled my mind. Like I was just shaking my head watching this episode.
So again, I you call it the worst episode. I don't think I can quite do that because it didn't really have a cringe subplot with the two friends in it, and that's just such a negative for me. And I got the sense that they were kind of trying with this episode to do something a bit different. Having out of order storytelling, which is a poker television movie cliche, of course. And again, had this show had more ambition to begin with, then having a mystery of what the heck is happening would mean more to the viewer. With this, for the most part, it copies the premise of Memento pretty much because Lucky will see a scene out of context. The next scene will be chronologically before it, so it adds context to that. That's not something that I think could be unsuccessful in television. I think it's kind of to keep the audience guessing is always very important with television. The thing is that we know that he and Terry are not breaking up. We know that he's not dying. We know that there's still 3 more episodes to go in the show. So there's limited what you can do with what a mystery is. I feel like a mystery that could work is if one of the two friends goes missing and they're trying to find him. Something like that where the stakes are there, and while you don't actually expect Craig Robinson's character to die. At least you could buy into the idea of not knowing what's happening to him could mean something. But really, the big twist is that his dad has the same birthday as him and died at the same age as him, and then that, the truck driver scenes were all a hallucination. And so again, having a hallucination, it's a very delicate plot device in TV because a lot of times you feel cheated or it feels unearned. Every now and I would say maybe 1 to 3 times I buy into it. Scrubs is a good example of hallucination that I bought into because JD, the main character, has fantasy sequences, so it's not out of character. But this is a show that is framed in reality. It doesn't really mess with sci-fi or anything out of, reality. I guess that's one thing that is consistent across the show, except for here. So to all of a sudden throw us in there and then have like a identical truck with a different truck driver this time pop up and appear at the end in a sort of a deja vu-ish moment really doesn't vibe with the show at all.
Yeah, and I mean the narrative itself, when you're finally able to glean what exactly is going on, just also doesn't work. So Lucky's turning 36. He wants sort of a low-key birthday, doesn't want a party. Okay, that makes sense. He goes and plays roulette. That's 1K on 36 as his 36th birthday, and he wins. So now he wants to leave Las Vegas. Why? Where did this come from? Why does he want to leave Las Vegas all of a sudden? He goes and tells Terry, he's like, hey, Terry, we should go and leave Las Vegas together. And Terry actually agrees. And he says that his dad is giving him a sign to leave Las Vegas and they need to see if they should, work together. So she agrees. Then they meet up at Lucky's place. Terry all of a sudden doesn't want to go to Las Vegas anymore. She doesn't really give an explanation why. So Lucky's already bought 2 tickets, so he tears up 1 ticket, goes into the cab, then goes to the airport. It turns out that he, one, tore up his ticket, not Teresa's, and two, he left all his money in the cab, so now he can't fly. Then all of a sudden he gets this car from Craig Robinson and is driving down the strip with it. And there's this like, it feels like 20 minutes, but it's probably just like 1 minute. This montage of him like driving down the strip and he's like waving at things and looks like stock footage. And then all of a sudden, like the camera starts shaking. He gets a flat tire. He's like, oh no, I'm losing control. And he crashes into the Welcome to Las Vegas sign and gets into a car accident. And then that's from there, it's the hallucination with his dad. It's just such a weird narrative because again, like, why does he want to leave Las Vegas all of a sudden? His dad had never been mentioned before. What is this sign that he's seeing from his dad? Why is he taking Terry with him? Why isn't he respecting her needs? She has a job as a realtor, right? Like, why isn't he talking to her about this in advance? Why isn't he waiting a period of time? Like, hey, Terry, let's leave Las Vegas. Let's plan for this in 2 months. Why do you have to leave right away? All of these, questions being asked, none of which this episode has any interest in answering.
Yeah, it got me thinking, I suppose as well, I thought that this is, you could kind of refer this as the dad episode, and we had
Mhm.
the dead wife episode. And again, I guess I found, because I hated the friends so much, I was trying to grasp onto anything with the character of Lucky I could. So I guess
Yeah.
maybe that's why I'm being a bit nicer to these episodes that focus on his family or backstory more, because again, it's just it's at least like 2 out of 10 something that I want to latch on to rather than the negative 10 out of 10 with the friends here. And so I would say it's definitely one of the more memorable episodes of the season for me. Not one of the best, but the only one where they changed up the narrative flow and tried to do something
Mhm.
besides just scam on top of scam. But I can't. So I'd say it probably ranks somewhere in the middle for me as far as quality of the episodes of the show, not rather than the bottom for me. But and again, when you describe the narrative in chronological order, like you were, yeah, it's not very good. But at least when it's out of order, it's a little bit hard. It takes more levels of brain processing to kind of realize why it's bad.
Okay, I mean, it is an engaging episode. I mean, I was like, where the hell is this going? Why is this happening?
That's what I'm saying is that it was more engaging than the rest of the season for the most part.
Yeah, that's fair.
With episode 11, we get to called the dating game, or as I call it, the breakup episode. Which again, I again question putting this episode after episode 10, where ends of him realizing he wants to be with Terry, because you're going to go in the complete opposite direction with the tone of their relationship, with them breaking up temporarily, and then of course tricks and traps and not quite scams, but more deception once again being the main part of the plot here, where the two friends hire actors to flirt with Lucky and Terry to convince them to get back at each other after they have that fight. But again, it's another scene where Terry is upset at Lucky for inviting their friends to a date, and it's like how tone deaf does a guy have to be? Like, you know. there are situations where you like to have your friends along a few, but having one-on-one time with your girl is a normal thing, and I don't see why Lucky wouldn't want to have that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I thought she was completely justified in being angry at him. Why would you invite your two friends to this fancy restaurant on what's supposed to be a romantic night? I mean, thus far in the show, we've only seen like what, two or three scenes with Lucky and Terry actually spending time alone together, versus we've seen all these scenes with Lucky and his two friends. Like it's pretty clear that he wants to spend more time with his friends than her. She has every right to be angry. And these two clowns come in and they grab menus like, what's prawns? It's like a duck. Oh, I've never been here before. Like making this whole scene. I mean, she's absolutely right. And it absolutely makes sense why, especially before when it's established that he hasn't asked her any questions about herself. He didn't know that she was a vegetarian. They don't really seem to be spending much time together on screen. Like it makes total sense that they would break up.
One thing I noted is that this episode probably has the most attempts at jokes and punchlines out of the whole series. I didn't
Mhm.
laugh once, but at least they were attempting with the dialogue to try to be funny, I suppose. And again, they both meet someone named Joe at the bar, and once I heard the same name for both of them, I was like, oh, okay, this is clearly just a friend setting up. I instantly locked onto that sort of twist. And
Mhm.
again, the episode tries to fool us by having both Lucky and Terry on the phone trying to arrange dinner plans with their dates at the same time, and they both said the same name, so we know it's not to each other. So I guess that was again one camera split screen trick that they tried to do. Again, they didn't try to do that very often in the show at all. So I guess they were trying at that moment, I suppose, to fool us. But
Mhm.
again, they go from like 1 to 10 so fast. Where if this had been like multiple episodes where they were broken up and it was with a fake false romantic lead for both of them to have, that could have been maybe what a different show might have done here. But to have us all be in one episode, you knew from the start of the episode that they were going to be back together by the end anyway.
Yeah, I mean, there's this really cringy scene where like Lucky is going with his date to a restaurant. It turns out that Terry and her date have also come to the same restaurant. And then dueling banjos starts playing, and they both make these like big gestures of like, making out with each other. And then like he reaches his hand underneath the table to make it seem like he's touching her on her crotch and things like that. It's just really, I had to scroll down. Like I couldn't really watch this scene. It was really cringy.
And it's probably the raunchiest scene of the whole show. I mean, there's really, for an FX black comedy show, I was expecting a lot more nudity, maybe some more sex jokes, some, you know, maybe not like strippers every episode or something like that, but definitely more like, Tilt definitely got that vibe in there for sure that this show didn't touch upon. And again, I didn't laugh. I didn't think it was funny. I don't think that uh, you know. I mean, I didn't feel that this romance between Terry and Lucky was as bad as, say, the romance in Tilt. But at the same time, I didn't feel that it ever really took any meaningful steps or developments, particularly since the whole gambling thing just kind of comes in and out when the show wants to.
Yeah, and again, this whole turning the tables on the two friends, like when did Lucky and Terry figure out that they were being scammed? When did they communicate with each other? How did they arrange things with Joe to do this? Because again, you have this dueling banjo scene, and then, what is it, like a day later, 2 days later, that this scene at Terry's house where Joe actually pulls out a gun and fires blanks at people, which is so over the top and crazy. When do these two scenes happen in relation to each other? I mean, I just don't get it at all.
It's just not good. And again, it didn't make sense to try to fake or break up these two right after he'd had this sort of head injury hallucination about wanting to be with her. Again, you should have rearranged these episodes much better so that it wouldn't have felt so jarring, which clearly they didn't think about when they were making the show.
Yeah, and the end of this episode is really strange too. So, I mean, they all go to Terry's house. Joe pulls out this fake gun. Turns out Lucky and Terry set this all up. And they say, like, we're teaching you a lesson about sticking your noses into other people's business. So the two friends leave, and Lucky and Terry are like, yeah, we finally have time to each other. And then Lucky and his friends are hanging out at his house. And then Terry shows up, and the two friends are like, all right, we're going to leave. But then Terry says, like, you guys can stay. We can watch Caddyshack too. And I also brought porn, and they're like all going to hang out with each other now. Like what is the point of this episode? Is the point of this episode Terry and Lucky finally sort of make up and have time to themselves, or Terry's okay with the two friends? Like what is this all supposed to be about, this episode? I have no idea.
Yeah, that last scene really needed to just be Lucky and Terry by themselves to really sell the whole plot. And it wouldn't have been great, but it would have at least made sense in the context of how the episode was framed, and they didn't. So that's unfortunate. Episode 12 gets us back to more awful slapstick, more ridiculous, annoying subplots. Honestly, the subplot was done better in Big Fat Liar with Paul Giamatti. I mean, it's just so bad. So episode is called Monkey on Your Back. The A plot is Lucky is handcuffed to Danny, the druggy, mugger, loser character that I think appeared twice or three times before this. He was the one that was in the pilot that mugged him and had popped. Again, he's probably like, in the top 10 or maybe top 8 for like recurring side characters, but really, isn't a character per se. He's just another loser. He's in the court. He's in the court. Lucky offers to be a character witness for him. This is where Homer Simpson is voice is the guest judge here. And honestly, I've seen people in courtrooms get held in contempt for saying half of what Lucky said, but whatever. And Danny basically drives him crazy as he has to be handcuffed for a week to avoid being considered a bail jumper, flight risk, whatever you want to call it. And it's while the for some reason the B plot, don't ask me why, but someone thought this would be a good idea, is the two friends get jobs as clowns and they wear clown makeup the whole episode. That's for some reason they chose to do that.
Yeah, I audibly sighed when they showed up dressed as clowns. I'm like, oh my God, this is where this is gonna go. And it's just every obvious bit of humor about these two guys dressed as clowns. The little kids don't like them. Oh, there's a scene where they're in a backyard and there's a piñata, and the My Name is Earl guy is standing right next to the piñata with a stick and is like, all right, it's time for piñata time. And you know what's coming. You know he's gonna get hit with the stick. And then Craig Robinson has sex with a woman in a bathtub, dressed as a clown. Just really, really weird stuff. And meanwhile, you have the subplot with Lucky and this check cashing guy, who, this guy had physically assaulted him and stolen his money, and yet Lucky is comfortable being handcuffed to him for 5 days. And he's trying to quit his drug addictions. And at one point, he sneaks out. Like, you have this, serious subplot that you have to deal with, and you just have these two bozos dressed as clowns. It just doesn't work.
Nice pun there, both those are just clowns.
Yeah.
One like again like probably poker faux pas number three is while Lucky is handcuffed to Danny at the table, he's like detoxing, which I think it could have been something to that subplot. And then he's like putting his chips in the middle for him, which first of all would not be allowed. I mean, let's pretend that they're allowed to be in the casino handcuffed. Fine, he's not. He's sitting behind him at the table, not like next to him at the table. But him putting in money for Lucky would not stand as a bet. Like that just would not happen. It'd probably like throw him out of the casino, honestly, if that happened. And just for him, and then why is he doing that? Like what is compelling him to bet money for Lucky? He didn't see his cards clearly, right? He's not like holding his cards so you can see him. So what is his motivation to do it besides just being annoying?
Yeah, like he says that he's like got a read on the other players, like, oh, that guy's gonna fold, that guy's so I thought like maybe that's where the episode is going, that like he helps Lucky somehow, but then this never happens again. Like we never learn who this character is or why he's doing what he's doing. And meanwhile, again, you have all this like stupid stuff, like Lucky and Terry are trying to have a conversation. Terry's got a drink, and so Lucky's sort of like moving back and forth so he can make eye contact with Terry. And then this guy like leans over and like takes some of Terry's drink. Like the writers were more concerned with doing these like weird jokes and slapstick and actually exploring this scenario. Like, what would it be like for Lucky to be handcuffed to this guy for 5 days? How do they learn from each other? How does their relationship build from where it began in the show? Which, to repeat, is this guy hitting Lucky on the head with a glass bottle, cutting his head open and stealing his money. Like this could have been an interesting sort of character building episode, but no, it's instead just these weird jokes.
And they try to add some, I guess, minor preparation for the finale by having Terry have a new sponsor for Gamblers Anonymous, who won't
Mhm.
appear ever again though. And then by having Danny like tuck the drugs into the sewer grate to like fight the urge to use, which again they're trying to make it seem like he's growing as a character, but that's just not on the agenda for the show up until this point, and we're not going to see him again anyway. So what's the point? We don't care about this guy. We care, if one of the friends had a drug problem, then maybe I would care a bit about them fighting the urge to use drugs. But with already the gambling part of things not being addressed at all for the most part, it seems silly to even throw that scene in there at all, as if it's some big like momentous dramatic scene.
Yeah, the whole thing with Terry in this episode is very strange. I mean, we see her at the diner because, again, there's just one diner in Vegas with her sponsor, and she's talking about how she hasn't gambled in 57 days. And the sponsor says, does it make sense for you to be with Lucky, who's a compulsive gambler? That makes a lot of sense, right? Does it make sense to be with this person? That could be dramatically interesting. Then she just starts gambling.
And
Like we
winning.
just, yeah, and winning big and just over and over again. And then Lucky sees that she's gambling. The friends have called Lucky to tell her that she's gambling. So you're thinking like this is going to be some dramatic moment. There's going to be some conversation between the two. Maybe Lucky realizes he's a bad influence on her. But then they just start gambling together. And they're in bed together with all this money. Like she's naked and covering her body with money. And I was so confused by that as an ending. It's like, are we supposed to say good for her that she's back to gambling again? Like she and Lucky have connected? Are we supposed to think as an audience, oh, Lucky and Terry are deluded. They think that this is a good thing, even though it actually isn't? What is this supposed to mean as an ending? I don't understand this at all.
I know, like, are we supposed to be horrified that these two compulsive gamers have like hit rock bottom, even though they've won money? Like, I was waiting for there to be some sort of like pan shot where it's like there's all this money and it cuts to them like sobering up that all the money's gone or something. Yeah, I don't
Mhm.
know. That could have been a good little, leading into the finale, plot twist ending, but they didn't have that in general. No, and again, it's confusing. Like, is the message of the show gambling bad or gambling good or gambling is in the middle of them? Like give us some direction here because with the finale in episode 13 rolling around, there's really nothing like on the line for the finale. Nothing's really changed. And I was really confused as to what we were building to.
Yeah, I mean, the season finale, as you might guess, is the, championship. Spoilers, Lucky wins the championship. And the guy Joe comes back and is like, "Hey, I want to fund your buy-in because you don't have the 10K." And he like has this big sort of flourish speech about stars and I'm going to pursue astronomy and all that. So Joe actually winds up threatening Terry and being like, "I'm going to hurt you if you don't make Lucky give." If Joe wants to give Lucky the money to fund him, so he goes to Terry, but Terry already has an arrangement to fund with Lucky the 10K. So he goes to Terry to threaten her. So she doesn't give the 10K anymore. So now Joe gives the 10K to Lucky. Did I get that correctly in terms of
Well, that's
logistics?
his plan, and again, like he's like threatening her in the basement of this home that she's like supposedly showing him. And I thought, at least like punch her, push her, like stand over her, something, or like drop your pen, have her reach over to pick it up and like stand over her, like do something, or lock her up in a car, like we saw Amy locked into a car earlier in the show. Like do something to add, and make it so that Lucky has to win the tournament to get her back. I mean, it'd be a bit of a jump from he was more just giving like veiled threats and real threats, but give us some stakes here because as is his character, we hadn't seen him in like the whole like for how many episodes at this point? Like most of the show at this point.
Yeah.
So it just seemed weird to kind of throw him in there. And of course, because we had clowns in episode 12, let's add mimes into the show too. Like again, like when you said you thought episode 10 was the worst of the show, like I could see why you thought that, but then clowns and mimes, man, I mean that's pretty bad too.
Yeah, they're just mimes. So they're off on their own because there's some line where they say, Lucky needs to focus, so we shouldn't hang out with him. And they're just outside doing mime stuff. There's a hat on the ground. And they're trying to get money from people. And so they're just doing this stupid mime acts of like, hey, isn't that good? Shouldn't you give us money? It's very strange. Again, they keep cutting back to it. I mean, develop the stuff with Terry. Like Terry breaks up with Lucky. Like develop that more. Let's see from her perspective what's going on. Why are you cutting to these two guys dressed as mimes? It feels like they're saying like, "Oh, we need to add comic relief here," but you don't have to do that.
And I guess the most finale part of the show outside of the tournament, which was teased in the episode prior, is that we also have Drake back again. So, because
Mhm.
the main plot here is like Terry won't give Lucky the money to play. And again, I'm not really sure what the downside is to playing of Joe's money, because that would be a stake deal, not a loan deal. Like, he's
Yeah.
offering like a, whatever kind of split it is for what you win. As obviously Joe believes in Lucky's ability if he's going to stake him. So I'm not quite sure what the negative is to. I mean, obviously, if you bust out, I mean, as long as you establish with Joe, if I lose, then I don't owe you the money. You're staking me, right? So, but that so then
Mhm.
ignoring that part of things, Drake is trying to convince Terry to fund Lucky's tournament buy-in, and he gives this pretty pretentious monologue. Like the show really hadn't had too many monologues over the course of its run. Tilt had a few here and there, with Michael Madsen in particular, but it was a sort of like a nothing monologue that Drake gives. And again, he's not even a character we know, so it's kind of like usually monologues are from a character that we know, so the words mean something. In
Right.
this case. But what ends up happening is while Joe is threatening Lucky with a gun to play, he trips and I guess shoots himself somehow, and then dies. Just in a really like it's the only death in the whole show that we see on screen that's like happening in real time, and it kind of came out of nowhere, and I was really caught off guard, and not in a good way.
Yeah, I mean, there's a scene from World War Z, the Brad Pitt zombie movie, where there's a character who slips on like a wet surface and shoots himself. And that to me worked a lot better because it's a wet surface. They're being attacked by zombies. This guy was established as being inexperienced, so that kind of makes sense. But like, yeah, Joe just shows up with a gun, even though he didn't have a gun before. He keeps bringing up this seam in the carpet, and then he just trips and shoots himself. And there's no blood or anything. He's just lying on the floor. There's no bullet wound. We can't tell, like, did he shoot himself in the head? Like, how does that happen? Like, you're carrying a gun down here by your hip. Like, how would you, like, bring the gun all the way up and point it at your head like this? I don't know. And then the two friends show up and they say, okay, Lucky, you got to play the tournament. We'll take care of this. So they wrap the body up in a carpet and they're just walking around Las Vegas with it for hours. It's daylight at first, then it's nighttime later. They stick it in a sewer at one point, and they try to like push him into like a bucket or something. It's very strange. Like, okay, like why? Why can't you just stash it in a storage container? Why can't you just throw it in a river? Put it in the trunk of a car? There's a thousand different things I can think of that are so much easier than this. And again, you have this weird slapstick while you have this subplot with like Terry making it up for Lucky, saying, I hope you do well. They finally say, I love you to each other. Genuinely heartfelt stuff. And then you just have this weird comedy.
Yeah, it's bad, and so Lucky uses the 10K that Joe was literally just carrying, like saying, I'll stake you," and so we get to so there's only like 4 minutes left in the episode when we sort of get to the tournament, which is kind of odd, and I couldn't maybe I missed the dialogue, but at one point the guy says it's the final four. And I didn't know if he
Yeah.
said final four tables or final four players because we see a montage of stuff happening and more than three players are busting. So it's not like it's like the final four players. And then he makes to the final table slash final two. I mean, a final table is more than two players, so that's just wrong in the first place. And he's the big hand is this is after Lucky and Terry have reunited and kissed and made up and stuff. And then so he's pondering whether or not to make this big call. While again there are racks of chips at the table, not stacks of chips. So that's wrong again. And he makes the call and wins. I guess it must have been the big hand versus the big hand because we don't see exactly what they had. But as he's winning, Terry just leaves, which I just don't get. Like there was a scene missing where it's like in between them making up and him, making to the final two. He's like what was her ideal outcome here? That's why I have to ask.
Yeah, when I was watching this for the first time, I thought she was leaving just because she was nervous and, Lucky was going to win and then run outside and go be with her and say like, "Hey, I won. Congratulations." But she gets in a taxi cab and she leaves the casino entirely. So, I mean, is she disgusted or something? Does she not want Lucky to win? Does she feel like she betrayed herself because she's gambling again? Nothing is shown, and Lucky doesn't leave the casino. He doesn't go after her. I thought like maybe like he'd fold the winning hand and like he pursues her over the
Yeah.
tournament, something like that. But he wins the tournament, he stays there, and he's like standing there afterward, and he doesn't look so happy. And the guy asks him, so how do you feel winning all this money? And he goes, lucky. And then that's where the episode ends. It's like supposed to be this big dramatic moment, but can't he just call her? Can't he just go to her house? Can't he just talk to her somehow? Like, is she leaving Las Vegas entirely? It doesn't make any sense.
It was a total swing and a miss, and I kept wondering would it be like a plot twist where like this win was the first win in the first place, and it was like going to be
Mhm.
like some sort of like twist in the twist here because we'd seen so many scams and plot twists already that it wasn't something that I thought was impossible. And again, like, so what is your message about this whole gambling issue? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Are we supposed to be happy he won? Are we supposed to be unhappy he won? Will he stop gambling now that he's won it again? Probably not. But just to end on this note, obviously, I'm not sure where a season two. It wouldn't have shocked me if season two had begun with them together anyway, and it's just like they break up like halfway into episode one or something of season two. Like I would not be surprised if that was going to be how it was going to be written.
Yeah, or they just like make up quickly and like nothing really happened and you still have these two friends. I mean, it's just very strange as a note to end on. I have to wonder if they really thought they were going to have a season two to wrap, to keep the storyline going. I mean, I really just have no idea. Yeah, like I mean, watching, any one of these episodes, if I just, watched episode one, I would not have watched the rest of the show. Um, I mean, mild fascination to see how things go, but I mean, I don't see how you can really care about these characters. I don't see how you can really care about what's going on. So, I mean, imagine my surprise when on IMDb it has a average user view of 8.1 stars, which is pretty high for a show like this. And I mean, just reading these reviews here, congrats on an interesting, cool look at all the levels of Vegas. Whoever canceled the show deserves to go to hell. My new fave show. I hate TV, but this has potential. Most people gave it seemed like a 10-star rating. So, I mean, I just don't understand why people like the show. I'm just going to be honest.
And so the YouTube channel that hosted these videos on YouTube of the episodes, most of the comments were actually pretty positive,
Hmm.
which although it makes you wonder if maybe the ones that care enough to really comment are the ones that like it, so
Yeah.
which can kind of make sense there. But yeah, I mean, really like, I mean, it's hard to call anything the best part of the show, but the best part of the show, number one, was probably just sometimes being surprised by the rug pulls or the twists of who was scamming who, I guess, even though they got pretty old by the end of the show. And I guess the second best thing is just kind of anytime we got any sense of Lucky as a character, his backstory, like again, we really only had two episodes that ever even tried to touch upon it, but at least with him we had a character that was in every episode that could maybe learn and grow as a character, even though we didn't really. But just the stuff, like I've never disliked two main characters as I have of these two friend characters and every subplot. And they never mix up like maybe one episode is one friend and Lucky, or one friend by himself. It's always the two of them together in some ludicrous, nonsensical garbage.
Yeah, I mean, I thought John Corbett did okay as an actor. There's nothing that I really felt like he did like a super great job, but like he's fine. He has a decent screen presence. Again, if this had been a dramatic show, I think it would have been a lot better. Yeah, I mean, the two friends really, really ruined this. I mean, they're the reason why the show just isn't funny, just not tonally appropriate. Neither of them have much to work with. They've been funny in other things. I really blame more just the scripts than their acting. Yeah, I mean, again, I was interested to see where things go and see how things build, but I mean, I really can't recommend watching this. This is not so bad it's good either. I mean, watching an unfunny comedy is just dreadful. I mean, it's just really, really dreadful. Is it one of the worst comedy shows I've ever seen? I mean, I guess so. I've seen a lot of pretty bad comedy shows out there and obviously comedy movies, but yeah, like I really just don't recommend this to watch it.
Yeah, and again, as far as FX, I do associate the FX brand, the AMC channel brand to a certain level of quality, and I just,
Yeah.
this is a very cheap looking show. It's obviously a very low budget. They only could afford to have three people in the main cast, so they were saving on the, main cast salaries versus recurring cast salaries. It's not like overtly sexist or misogynistic like other stuff has been. And I would say the main three casts all being guys definitely doesn't lean towards that direction, but I guess it could have been worse on that front. Again, I smirked, maybe like on kind of one hand how many times. I didn't really laugh ever. I mean, again, so the attempts at humor, if you discount the slapstick, really aren't set up like in a typical, sitcom-y sort of structure as far as, line, punchline, reaction. So it's really weird to even call this a comedy show. It's just really more of a, I mean, to even call it a dramedy, really only two episodes hinted at drama in any facet at all. So, and it just the fact that it refused to really take a hard stance on gambling, on being a recovering gambler. I mean, you could have had this a show be a more comedic if it had just been, a guy that wins $1 million and is a total loser and just loses money every episode and just you sort of, you laugh at him because of his misfortune and his foolish decision making. But he's just too competent of a character to ever get that vibe. That's where they could have gone with the show.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know how I'm supposed to feel about Lucky by the end of the show. Am I supposed to like him? Am I supposed to dislike him? Because you have those scenes where, he reads people and breaks people down, but then he just gets scammed over and over again. He gets his generosity taken advantage of. He's hanging out with these two losers. He doesn't seem to be a good boyfriend. So do I like this guy, or do I like, what am I supposed to feel about this character? And that's really, really weird for anything really, but a long form episodic story, 13 episodes, several hours of content. By the end, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about the main character. That is such a fatal mistake.
Yeah, and again, as a show about poker, again, there's just if you took every poker scene and smushed it into one and just watched all the poker stuff, you really wouldn't learn anything about poker. You wouldn't learn about what makes somebody good or bad at poker. You wouldn't learn anything besides just don't play poker. If you
Yeah.
because you're going to lose a lot, and only when the plot determines you're not supposed to lose is when you're going to. As far as with does would you ever recommend this to anybody on any level? I really can't. There's just it's a total comedic dead zone for me, and I honestly, if I had seen Greg Robinson and My Name is Earl Cop in anything in this before hiring for their show, I'm not sure I would have hired them personally, but that's just me.
Yeah, I can't recommend this to anybody. I mean, it's not funny, it's not clever. I'm just baffled by the fact this got nominated for an Emmy. I mean, if this can get nominated for an Emmy, anyone can get nominated for an Emmy. So maybe I'll just start writing a TV show now just to give it my best shot. That I guess that's the silver lining. It's like, hey, it can't be as bad as Lucky, so I'll give that a shot maybe.
Yeah, I mean, as far as it's kind of hard for me to say this was my favorite episode, my least favorite. I guess I think I said episode like 6 was my favorite,
Hmm.
with the dead wife moral episode, I guess, and I guess maybe the meat episode and the pilot and the out of order episodes were towards the top half, I guess, but everything else just like if you were going to rank like the subplots and the main plots, all the subplots would be the very bottom half, and the main plots would be all the top half by default. I wouldn't even have to look at my list to determine that. And again, it just goes to show you that comedy is not easy
Hmm.
because but you gotta try. And in this case, they just did not try at all.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to rank them, as I mentioned, episode 10 would probably be at the bottom. Just too confusing, tonally comes out of nowhere. I don't think the comedy worked at all. I don't think the revelations about Lucky's character worked at all. I also have to put, episode 8 toward the bottom because I just found that character really homophobic. Episode 7 toward the bottom because I just hated the autistic character, I should say. Yeah, like episode 6, I guess, is toward the top. Again, I think it had potential. I think it, again, in a drama focused show without comedy, with the wife established sooner, with Terry established sooner, this could have worked. Yeah, I mean that's I guess the one episode I would, just gets off the bottom a little bit. Beside that, it's really hard to rank the rest of them. But as you mentioned, yeah, the A plots are so much better than the B plots.
Yeah, and I guess the Amy episodes, I want to say I thought those are probably a bit better than the other A plots if I had to go on average, if only because at least there was some level of surprise or not knowing exactly where the story was going because of the layers of what scam was going on with who. But then if I was going to compare it with Tilt as far as what show is better or worse, like I hate this show does put up a pretty good fight in that tug of war, honestly, for me because I hated Tilt so much, and I was flabbergasted by how bad it was. But then those subplots of those friends on Lucky are like just as bad though. But I guess because I occasionally found something to latch on to with the Lucky subplots, I guess that gives Lucky the slight edge. But at the same time, Tilt did have the main event, Phil Hellmuth and David Williams stuff in there. But I guess if I had to, gun to my head, pick one show was worse, I guess Tilt is just barely worse than this show. But it's close though.
Well, by worse, I mean, Tilt to me is so bad it's good. Like I'm laughing at it.
Right.
I'm laughing at just the weird subplots, the weird characters. I mean, throwing a fire extinguisher and it goes into slow motion and crashes into an aquarium. I mean, just these weird choices. Versus this is just a really unfunny comedy. I've seen, I did teen improv in high school with a friend of mine, and we tried to be funny and got no laughs. I mean, there was one performance that was 3 minutes where I got one laugh at the beginning, and then for the remaining 3 minutes, nothing, just dead silent. It is so awkward to be around somebody who's trying to be funny and failing miserably. Like that's what this feels like to me. It's just awkward and painful versus Tilt is so bad it's good. And I could watch Tilt right now. Like I never want to watch Lucky again. So yeah, Lucky is worse than Tilt. But again, they're both 1 out of 5s. Like they're both at the same level in terms of quality. They both have some offensive elements in them. They both have underdeveloped characters. Neither of them have anything really to say about Vegas. And yeah, Tilt does have, the Phil Hellmuth thing. It does have the main event thing. They got Lon and Norm, things like that. So I give them a little bit of props.
And again, to have a gambling TV series and have no real poker players or real gambler legends in there, odd choice. And again, I didn't expect much from a scripted show from ESPN, but I did
Mhm.
have high expectations for a show from FX. So I didn't come in with the same mindset as far as expectations. Because again, a lot of one-season shows are considered good. Like
Yeah.
some shows just don't attract an audience because they air at the wrong time slot on the wrong day of the week, or they don't get advertised well. So again, I had not discounted the show being a one season wonder because of how brief its TV reign was, but I clearly can see now why it didn't do well. The ratings aren't listed anywhere online for how many viewers it got, but clearly, I mean, this is a pretty low budget show, so it must have been pretty bad for that to have been canceled though.
Yeah, I mean, on IMDb, there's only 17 written reviews and there's only 339 star ratings. So it seems like very few people have seen the show. I think on YouTube, the views weren't very good. I think it was only like a couple thousand or something, or maybe even less than that. So yeah, like a lot of people just haven't checked the show out, and rightfully so. So I imagine it just didn't really get good ratings, did its season run, and that was it.
Yeah, but again, Sam, I'm glad that we had a chance to bond over some more shared television misery, and I think it's funny that you think Tilt is better, and I think that Tilt is worse than this show. So it's good that we have differing opinions here. But hopefully, the next time you watch Poker TV, you'll maybe find something that's marginally good. That'd be my fingers crossed hope. But we'll have to see what gets made next for us to find that white whale of sorts.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of out of, I guess, scripted dramas. I mean, there is poker scenes that are in movies like The Sting that I guess we could talk about. I think this was sort of, yeah, like the last sort of major poker television show or movie that's scripted that I think we hadn't watched yet. So, I mean, I am glad that we watched it for completion its sake. It is interesting to bring into conversation with Tilt and Lucky You and other things like that. So, yeah, I mean, I'm grateful that we saw that. I just really hope that, yeah, we can get a good scripted drama in there. And if any of y'all have any suggestions for scripted dramas or anything else that we can review, please let us know because we're always happy to look at more stuff.
Yeah, but for now, guys, thank you for listening to our long discussion here. We had a lot of fun here. Hopefully, we'll have some more success in the 2026 Mind Sport Olympiad, and we'll keep you updated to see how us and our other friends at RecPoker and Aaron Robertson do in those future events. And if you have any content or ideas for stuff you want us to review in the future, let us know in the comment section. We're happy to listen. Or if you want to be a guest on our show, let us know. We're hoping maybe to get one or two guys from RecPoker to be a guest in the near future. That'd be pretty exciting. And obviously, it's not too late for you listeners out there to join the MSO. There's still 6 more events to go, so you still have a chance to get 5 good scores to accumulate those Grand Prix or poker points to win a medal. And yeah,
Yeah, I mean, RecPoker did launch a new website, I think really like yesterday and today that they're moving to a new home. So they're really getting started and getting things under gear. And I think they also sent out like a little newsletter sort of explaining different things they're going to do. Rob Gardner's doing a couple things. A podcast and a coach's corner where he talks about strategy and stuff. So they're really stepping up their game over there. I'm going to be curious to see what they've got in store. Maybe I'll, play a little bit more of their home games and stuff like that. They're kind of scheduled late. Unfortunately, it's at like 9 o'clock, but they did have a couple of events over I think it was a couple weekends ago during the day that we could actually play. So hopefully we can do more of that moving forward because that's a
yeah.
really
And
great
and also a big thanks to the Rec Poker guys that watched our review last time of Chase the Dream Season 2. We had a great response on Twitter and on YouTube for some kind words on Twitter about our dedication to watching their poker action during the coverage of that documentary series. And I'll even just read some of the reposts they had of of my post on Twitter because it's some very kind words I wanted to bring to everyone's attention here. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
I haven't seen these, so this would be my first time seeing
Yeah,
these.
so the guys like Rob and Jay said some kind words, and let me just see if I can find them. Sorry, one second here.
That's okay.
Uh, da, da, da. So, oh yeah, so Brett Keems from RecPoker said, "I appreciate the time and detail put into this review. Spot on for a lot of things, both positive and constructive." So again, thank you for those kind words there. We had Rob Gardner say, "Appreciate these guys immensely. This season was a lot of work. I had a lot on my plate, but thanks to some friends we got to the finish line." And then Jay Carafiello, I can't express how much I appreciate the support, feedback, and time put into this review. Ben, thanks again. As we move along this journey on and off the felt, we sometimes don't capture things the viewers want to see. This helps with perspective. So again,
Wow.
thank you for all those words there. And again, we hope to talk to maybe Jay or to Rob in the future and just learn a bit more about the behind the scenes about Chase the Dream, the Rec Poker, where the overlap was. I'd be very curious, and also just to hear about them talk about poker in general, like we did with Jim Reed as well.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. That's like really touching. Like, thank you. I really appreciate that, and thank you for all that you've done in Rec Poker and for Chase the Dream and all that. Again, it was a lot of fun to watch, and I'm really looking forward to what y'all have in store and what season three is like.
Yeah, and also just maybe if anybody from the Rec Poker crew or the Chase Dream crew play in the 2026 World Series in Vegas, just tracking them in those other events, and of course the main event too, because that's my favorite event to watch as a viewer. But for now, guys, we'll see you next time. Have a good rest of your February like Valentine's Day weekend that's coming up. Stay safe, and yeah, see you next time.
Yep, and hopefully you'll be luckier than us when you're looking at poker media.
Bye, guys.